this isn't exciting. That's the point. So take the pressure off, relax, and let these old stories guide you gently towards sleep. If you're enjoying these sleep stories, feel free to give us a like or subscribe, but no pressure at all. Now, let's start our journey. Ever woken up to the sound of Rome bustling in the morning? It's like living inside a beehive where everyone's trying to sell you something, including themselves. The sun's barely up and already the streets are alive with the chatter of merchants and the clatter of chariots. You, a Roman prostitute, are part of this vibrant, chaotic tapestry. But hold on, don't get too romantic about it. The life of a Roman prostitute wasn't all laurel wreaths and toga parties. It was gritty, complicated, and surprisingly organized. Let's start with your morning routine. Forget leisurely breakfasts or morning yoga. You're rolling out of bed as the first light hits the terracotta rooftops, probably in a modest insula, a Roman apartment block that's a far cry from the palatial villas of the elite. The rent isn't cheap, maybe around 50 denarii a month, depending on your location, but it's livable. Your room's just a stone's throw from the bustling streets, positioning you right in the thick of your clientele's daily commute. First things first, dressing to impress, or more accurately, to attract. Roman prostitutes, or meretresses, were artists of the come-hither look long before makeup tutorials were a thing. You'd slip into something instantly recognizable, maybe a brightly colored stola, or a tunica that screamed, "Look at me." Subtlety wasn't the game here. Visibility was. You might even sport a specific hairstyle or a distinctive piece of jewelry. The point was to stand out like a peacock in a flock of pigeons. But being a Roman prostitute wasn't just about what you wore, it was about where you stood in the social pecking order. The Roman hierarchy was a complex web of status and privilege, and you were right there, in the thick of it. Legally, you were a bit of an outlier. While technically free, you were still marked by your profession. As a registered prostitute, or a lupi, you were required to pay taxes. Yes, even back then, the taxman cometh. But your legal standing afforded you a surprising amount of autonomy compared to other women. You could own property, make contracts, and, crucially, keep the money you earned. You were a small business owner in the ancient gig economy. As you get ready to face the day, you've got to be strategic about where you set up shop. The Subura district is a hotspot, teeming with life and, more importantly, potential clients. It was the Times Square of ancient Rome, glamorous from a distance but gritty up close. You could also try the Circus Maximus, where the races drew crowds like moths to a flame. Standing amid the masses, you're a living billboard vying for the attention of passers-by who might toss a few sesterces your way. Now, before we get too far ahead, let's bust a myth or two. The romantic image of a prostitute as a tragic muse or a fallen woman with a heart of gold? Yeah, not so much. While some tales have been spun around the idea of the noble courtesan, reality was far less glamorous. Most Roman prostitutes were working to survive, not to star in a romantic epic. The idea of the seductive temptress, while appealing, glosses over the harsh economic realities you faced. You were part of an industry that was as much about survival as it was about seduction. Speaking of economics, let's talk numbers. A typical day might see you earning anywhere from a few asses, that's Roman currency, not livestock, to several denarii, depending on your clientele and services. To put it in perspective, a loaf of bread cost about half an as, while a bottle of wine might set you back 2 to 3. So you'd need to be savvy, balancing your earnings with the cost of living in a city where fortunes could change faster than the chariot races at the circus. But let's not forget the social dynamics at play. Prostitution in Rome wasn't just a transaction, it was a complex social interaction. You were dealing with everyone from slaves to senators. Each client came with their own set of expectations, desires, and, occasionally, demands for discretion. Your ability to navigate these social waters determined your success. The connections you made could be as valuable as the coins you earned. So, as the morning sun climbs higher and the streets of Rome hum with activity, you step out into the world. You're not just a face in the crowd, you're a vital part of the social and economic fabric of the city. Your day is about more than just making ends meet. It's about carving out a space for yourself in a society that's as demanding as it is vibrant. And while the life of a Roman prostitute might not be wrapped in the romantic glow of legend, it's a life of resilience, strategy, and an unyielding drive to survive in the heart of the ancient world. So, you're out there in the bustling heart of Rome, and let's get real. It's time to talk business, of the coin-clinking variety. The economics of being a Roman prostitute was a balancing act on a tightrope strung over a pit of financial uncertainty. So, grab your metaphorical ledger because, no, QuickBooks wasn't a thing yet, and let's dive into the nitty-gritty of your ancient gig economy. First off, let's address the big myth. Were Roman prostitutes rolling in denarii, living lives of luxury while reclining on plush couches with grapes dangling overhead? Not quite. Sure, there were exceptions, like the illustrious courtesans who catered to the elite. They might have been able to afford a villa or two, but they were the ancient world's equivalent of top-tier influencers. For the average meretrix, life was a different story altogether. Pricing your services was a strategic game. Consider this: a basic service might cost a few asses, while more exclusive offerings could fetch several denarii. To put it in modern terms, it's like comparing a $1 menu burger to a gourmet steak dinner. But hold your horses, or chariots, because even those denarii didn't stretch as far as you might hope. With a loaf of bread setting you back half an as and a jug of wine costing upwards of 2, basic living expenses quickly ate into your earnings. And let's not forget rent, which could cost you around 50 denarii a month. That's before you even think about splurging on the latest fashion from the forum's hottest market stalls. Clients were a mixed bag, serving everyone from the everyday Roman citizen to the toga-draped members of the senatorial class. Your customer base was as diverse as Rome's street food options. High-profile clients might demand discretion, which sometimes came with a premium price tag. But let's be honest, discretion's value was worth its weight in gold, or at least bronze, if it meant avoiding the scandal sheets of the day. Now, about those financial strategies. It wasn't just about earning, it was about making that income work for you. Some savvy prostitutes invested their earnings, perhaps acquiring a stake in a local tavern or lending money at interest. Yep, they were early adopters of the side hustle. Others pooled resources with fellow workers, creating informal cooperatives to share expenses like rent and protection fees. Think of it as ancient Rome's version of a co-working space, but with a bit more incense and fewer motivational posters. But what about those tales of opulent banquets and scandalous soirees? Here's the kicker. While such stories do have a kernel of truth, they're often exaggerated. Sure, there were parties, and yes, some prostitutes did mingle with the upper crust. But for many, these events were more work than play, a chance to network and secure high-paying clients. Remember, behind the allure of a glittering event was the reality of a working night. And speaking of myths, let's tackle another one. Were prostitutes outcasts lurking on society's fringe? Not exactly. While their job didn't earn them a spot in the upper echelons, they were part of the social fabric. Some even became influential figures, using their connections to sway public opinion or political decisions subtly. It's the kind of behind-the-scenes power that doesn't get its due credit in the history books. As evening falls and the bustling streets of Rome begin to quiet down, well, as quiet as Rome ever gets, you're left counting the day's takings. It's a moment of reflection, not just on the clinking coins, but on the life you're carving out in a city that never sleeps. You're a survivor, an entrepreneur, and a part of an ancient world that's as vibrant and challenging as they come. And while the legends may paint your life with broad, romantic strokes, the reality is a nuanced portrait of resilience and resourcefulness. So, as the city lights flicker against the night, you ready yourself for another day in the life of a Roman prostitute, a life filled with challenges and triumphs, myth and reality intertwined. As the city lights flicker against the night, you ready yourself for another day in the life of a Roman prostitute, a life filled with challenges and triumphs, myth and reality intertwined. But let's not get ahead of ourselves with dreams of denarii and toga-clad admirers. Your world didn't revolve solely around what happened between dusk and dawn. It was an intricate dance of social dynamics, where relationships and alliances were just as critical as the coins in your purse. First off, let's talk clients. Because, really, interacting with them was like playing poker with a deck of cards missing a few kings. You never quite knew what you were going to get. One minute you might be charming a lovesick poet who's convinced you're his muse, and the next you're negotiating with a senator who's more interested in discretion than delight. But that was the game. a delicate balance of flattery and pragmatism. In the bustling streets of Rome, proximity was everything. Your regulars might include merchants from the Forum, soldiers on leave, or even the odd gladiator fresh from the arena. And each came with their own expectations and, sometimes, their own peculiarities. Take the wealthy equestrians, for instance. Sure, they had money to spare, but they also had reputations to maintain. A discreet liaison was often worth more than the gold stamped with the emperor's face. But what about the other side of your social circle, the fellow workers who shared your world? Let's be clear, the competitive spirit was alive and well on the Roman streets. Yet, there was also camaraderie born from shared experiences. In the insulae, those crowded apartment blocks, you'd find a sort of informal support network. Need a place to stay when the rent collector was banging on your door? A fellow Miratrix might just have a spare corner for you to crash in. These alliances were vital, not just for survival but for navigating the labyrinth of Roman society. You might band together to fend off the unwanted advances of a particularly persistent client, or to collectively negotiate with the local lino, the pimps who sometimes acted more like landlords than protectors. These were the middlemen of the trade, often taking a cut of your earnings in exchange for, shall we say, a certain kind of protection. And while the romantic notion of a benevolent pimp with a heart of gold might make for a good story, the reality was usually more about power and profit. Speaking of power, let's dive into the societal perceptions that surrounded your profession. In ancient Rome, a prostitute's life was a paradox of public visibility and social invisibility. By law, you were required to register and pay taxes. No under-the-table transactions here. But that didn't mean society fully accepted you. It was a world of double standards, where your services were in demand, yet your presence was often marginalized. Yet this marginalization didn't mean you were without influence. Some prostitutes wielded considerable social power, leveraging their connections to gain favors or influence decisions. Take the story of Volumnia Cytheris, a freedwoman who rose from the position of a Miratrix to become the mistress of several prominent Roman figures, including Mark Antony. Her presence at public events and her relationships with powerful men granted her an unusual level of influence and access. And let's not overlook the public scenes where you might find yourself at the center of attention, whether you wanted to be or not. The Roman populace loved a spectacle, and sometimes that included the shaming of a prostitute who dared to overstep her bounds. But, as with many things in Rome, these public humiliations were often as much about entertainment as they were about enforcing social norms. Despite these challenges, the life of a Roman prostitute was not devoid of personal relationships and small victories. Friendships formed in the shared spaces of the insulae, bonds tightened over shared secrets and strategies. And while the outside world might view you through a lens of scandal or judgment, within your own community there existed a sense of solidarity. Now, let's debunk a few more myths while we're at it. The romanticized tales of the alluring courtesan living in luxury are just that, tales. For most, the reality was far grittier. Yet, these stories persist because they offer an escape, a glamorized vision of a life that was often anything but. They're the ancients' version of a rags to riches story, compelling but rarely reflective of the everyday experience. In this complex social web, your ability to maneuver and adapt was key. It wasn't just about survival, it was about finding a way to thrive in a society that was as contradictory as it was captivating. You were part of a world that thrived on its contrasts, where opulence and poverty, power and subjugation existed side by side. And through it all, you carved out a life defined by resilience and a refusal to be reduced to mere footnotes in history. In the end, your story isn't just one of survival. It's a testament to the intricate dance of social dynamics that defined life in ancient Rome. As you navigate the winding streets and crowded marketplaces, you're not just a player in a historical narrative, you're a linchpin in the vibrant tapestry of Roman society. And while the myths and legends may paint your world with broad strokes, the truth is far more nuanced, a story of human resilience, adaptability, and the relentless pursuit of agency in a world that often sought to deny it. As the night deepens and the city's murmurs soften, you find yourself reflecting on the day's interactions. The coins in your purse are not just currency, they're a testament to your skill in navigating a world that's as demanding as it is dynamic. You're a survivor, a strategist, and a vital part of an ancient world that continues to captivate modern minds. And while the legends may offer a romanticized view, the reality is far richer. A story of resilience and resourcefulness that defies easy categorization. As the night deepens and the city's murmurs soften, you find yourself reflecting on the day's interactions. The coins in your purse are not just currency. They're a testament to your skill in navigating a world that's as demanding as it is dynamic. It's time we tackle the broader cultural and political framework that made your life as a Roman prostitute a complicated dance of legality, morality, and sheer survival. Now, let's talk Roman law. Picture it as a sprawling labyrinth with rules that often seem designed to trip you up rather than guide you through life's complexities. In a society where even the toga had its own set of legal specifications, it's no surprise that sex work was tightly regulated. Roman law required prostitutes to register with the aediles, those charmingly bureaucratic officials who handled public order and morality. Think of them as the ancient Rome equivalent of a mixed bag of city council members and public health inspectors. Here's the kicker. Even though you were technically free to practice your trade, the law made sure you were constantly reminded of your otherness. You had to wear specific clothing, a toga, which was a garment typically reserved for men and disgraced women. Talk about rubbing salt in the societal wound. This mandated attire was Rome's way of publicly labelling you, a bit like wearing a neon sign that flashed "other" in the Forum. But being others came with its own peculiar advantages. While most Roman women had limited legal rights, your status allowed you to own property and engage in contracts, making you a bit of a trailblazer in the ancient gig economy. You were also a taxpayer, contributing to the coffers of an empire that, ironically, didn't fully accept you. It's like paying for a club membership only to be told you can't enter through the front door. Now, how were these laws enforced? Well, enforcement was often as inconsistent as a Roman's commitment to monogamy. The rules were in place, sure, but whether they were followed depended on who was watching. The aediles had their hands full with everything from supervising public games to clearing the streets of unlicensed vendors. Keeping tabs on every meretrix wasn't exactly their top priority. That said, if you crossed a powerful patron or fell afoul of a rival, those laws could suddenly become very relevant very quickly. And what about public opinion? The ever-fickle beast. On one hand, you were part of the social fabric, offering a service that was as much a part of Roman life as the gladiatorial games. On the other, you were often relegated to the margins, your presence tolerated but not celebrated. It was a classic case of can't live with 'em, can't live without 'em. The morality police of the day were quick to decry the moral decay you supposedly represented, even as the elite frequented your services with a wink and a nod. Speaking of morality, let's take a detour into the philosophical musings of ancient Rome. Stoicism was all the rage among the Roman intelligentsia, with its advocates prizing virtue and self-control above all. Prostitution, naturally, didn't exactly fit into this virtuous framework, yet some philosophers, ever the pragmatists, argued that your profession provided a necessary outlet for the uncontrollable passions of men. It was a sort of moral safety valve in a society that prized order above chaos. Economically, your role was a cog in the vast machinery of Rome's commerce-driven society. You contributed to the flow of money and goods, ensuring that the economy remained as lively as the debates in the Senate. The reality was that Rome's prosperity was built on a complex web of labour, both free and enslaved, that included your own contributions. But while your economic impact was undeniable, the social credit you received was often less than zero. The political arena, too, had its say in your life. Laws affecting prostitution were often tied to broader political agendas. Augustus, for instance, implemented moral reforms aimed at restoring traditional Roman values. These included laws that aimed to promote marriage and childbearing among the elite. While these reforms didn't directly target prostitutes, they contributed to a climate where your profession was seen as a threat to the moral fibre of Rome. It's the classic case of politicians using morality as a smokescreen for their real objectives. But here's the twist. Despite the legal and social hurdles, some prostitutes wielded surprising influence. Tales of women like Clodia, a notorious socialite and rumoured lover of poets, reveal how a sharp mind and a network of powerful connections could turn the tables in a male-dominated society. While she wasn't a prostitute per se, her story illustrates the potential for women to navigate and manipulate the social hierarchies of the time. And let's not forget the role of religion. The Vestal virgins, with their enforced chastity, stood in stark contrast to your own life. Yet both were entwined in the religious and cultural tapestry of Rome. While the Vestals were revered, your presence was a necessary counterpoint, a reminder of the human desires that the gods themselves were not immune to. It's a strange juxtaposition, sacred and profane, coexisting in a city that never seemed to sleep. In the end, navigating the labyrinth of laws and societal expectations required a strategic mind and an unyielding spirit. You were more than just an outsider. You were a participant in a grand social experiment, one that tested the limits of morality and legality. Your story is not just about survival. It's about thriving in the gaps and contradictions of a world that was as complex as it was captivating. As you prepare for another day in this ancient metropolis, the city around you is a constant reminder of the paradoxes that define your life. You're a cornerstone of the economy, a player in the social game, and a testament to the resilience of those who refuse to be confined by societal norms. The myths may offer a romanticized view, but the reality is far richer. A story of survival, strategy, and the pursuit of agency in a world that often sought to deny it. So, as the sun begins to rise again over the terracotta rooftops, you ready yourself to face another day in the life of a Roman prostitute, a life that continues to intrigue and captivate, as complex and multifaceted as the city itself. So here you are, ready to face another day in the bustling, chaotic world of ancient Rome. But before you dive back into the fray, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture, one that stretches far beyond the cobblestone streets and terracotta rooftops, reaching into the annals of history and right up to modern times. First, let's tackle the legacy of Roman prostitutes. Despite being sidelined in the historical narrative, they left an indelible mark on the social and economic fabric of Rome. Their existence was a testament to the complexities of a society that simultaneously demanded their presence and denied their acceptance. They were the original freelancers, navigating a world that was as unpredictable as it was unforgiving. And while the Roman Empire might have crumbled, the echoes of their lives continue to resonate. The portrayal of prostitutes in modern media often leans heavily on romanticized notions, the seductive siren, the tragic heroine, or the wise beyond her years, confidant. These are the tropes that sell tickets and draw in viewers, but they're a far cry from the gritty reality. The truth is, most Roman prostitutes weren't living out epic love stories or wielding secret power. They were working-class individuals just trying to make it to the next day. It's a narrative that's being polished for dramatic effect, but it glosses over the day-to-day struggles that define their lives. Consider the persistent myth of the courtesan with a heart of gold, an idea that finds its roots in ancient Rome but persists in everything from 19th century operas to modern cinema. It's a compelling story, sure, but it's also a convenient one. It allows audiences to engage with the idea of prostitution without confronting the harsh realities of exploitation and economic necessity. It's easier to sympathize with a character who's charming and cunning than with someone who's simply trying to survive in a world stacked against them. This isn't to say that Roman prostitutes didn't have agency or influence, far from it. Some, like the aforementioned Clodia, managed to navigate the intricacies of Roman society with remarkable skill. But these stories are the exception, not the rule. The majority were engaged in a constant hustle, balancing precariously on the edges of legality and morality. They were part of a society that was, to borrow a modern phrase, complicated. Their lives remind us that history is not just a series of grand events and heroic figures, but also the everyday struggles of those who lived in its shadows. Now, let's compare ancient and modern perceptions. The Romans, for all their advancements, were a society of paradoxes. They built aqueducts that stood the test of time, but grappled with the same moral dilemmas we do today. Their views on prostitution were complex, a necessary vice, tolerated but not celebrated. Fast forward to today, and while the societal context may have changed, the core issues remain. We still grapple with questions of morality, legality, and societal acceptance. The narrative may have shifted, but the underlying themes are remarkably persistent. What do these narratives reveal about societal changes over time? For one, they highlight our enduring fascination with the taboo. prostitution is often depicted as an exotic, forbidden world, a narrative that sells because it plays into our curiosity about what lies beyond the bounds of polite society. It's a reflection of our own contradictions. We condemn, yet we glamorize, we marginalize, yet we are endlessly intrigued. Moreover, these stories reveal our tendency to romanticize the past. We paint ancient Rome with a brush dipped in nostalgia, glossing over the grit in favor of grandeur. But history, much like life, is messy. It's rarely the clean-cut narrative we'd like it to be. The stories of Roman prostitutes remind us that behind the marble facades of history lie the untold stories of those who lived in its shadows, contributing to the great tapestry in ways that are often overlooked. As we wrap up this journey through the life and legacy of Roman prostitutes, it's clear that their story is more than just a footnote in history. It's a complex narrative that challenges us to reconsider our perceptions and confront the uncomfortable truths of the past. Their lives were a testament to resilience and resourcefulness, traits that continue to resonate in a world that, despite its technological advancements, often feels as chaotic and unpredictable as ancient Rome. So as you step back into the present, remember that history is not just about the grand events and towering figures. It's about the people in the margins, the ones whose stories are often overshadowed by myth and legend. It's about the rich tapestry of human experience, woven together through the ages, with each thread contributing to the whole. And in that tapestry, the lives of Roman prostitutes form a vital, vibrant part, reminding us that history is not just a collection of dates and events, but a reflection of our shared humanity, with all its triumphs and contradictions. Your eyes flutter open to the gentle sound of water lapping against wooden hulls. Welcome to 15th century Venice, where the canals are the main streets and the morning sun filters through the ornate windows of your palazzo, casting a golden glow on your bustling day ahead. You're not just any Venetian, you're a merchant, a mover and shaker in the city of commerce, where the Adriatic Sea is as much a marketplace as the Rialto. As you stretch and prepare for the day, the smell of coffee wafts through the air. Yes, coffee. Long before it became a hipster staple or an overpriced necessity at your local cafe, coffee was already making its rounds in Venice, thanks to traders like you who imported it from the east. You take a sip, feeling the bitter warmth fuel your morning. It's not just a drink, it's liquid gold, a status symbol, and a way to show off your connections to far-flung trade routes. Speaking of trade, let's talk about Venice's position, geographically and economically. The city sits like a jewel in the Adriatic, strategically poised between east and west. It's the ultimate middleman, profiting from the flow of silk, spices, and other treasures that Europe craves. You're part of this vast network, a cog in the machine that makes Venice one of the wealthiest cities in the world. But don't get too comfortable. Competition is fierce, and the market waits for no one. You step outside, and the scene is buzzing. Gondolas glide through the canals, laden with goods from every corner of the known world. Silk from China, spices from India, and glassware crafted with Venetian flair. Each gondolier is a mini CEO, balancing their precious cargo with the skill of a tightrope walker. These waterways are your highways, and you navigate them with the precision of a Formula One driver. You shout greetings to fellow merchants, your voice lost in the symphony of commerce. As you make your way to the market, consider this. Venice has a population of around 100,000 people, give or take a few thousand depending on who's counting. That's a lot of mouths to feed and pockets to fill, and you're right in the middle of it. The city is a melting pot of cultures, a bustling hub where Greek, Arab and Jewish traders rub elbows with Venetian nobility. It's a place where business deals are made over a handshake or a knife's edge, depending on the stakes. The heart of your operations is the Rialto market, a chaotic, vibrant mess of humanity and goods. As the saying goes, all roads lead to Rome, but in Venice, all canals lead to the Rialto. Here, amid the clamour of haggling voices and the smell of fresh fish and exotic fruits, you conduct your daily business. It's not just about selling, it's about reading the room, gauging the mood, knowing when to push and when to hold back. You're a master of negotiation, with a silver tongue and a sharp eye for opportunity. But let's not get carried away with the romance of it all. Trading in Venice isn't just a glamorous adventure. It's a cutthroat world where fortunes are made and lost in the blink of an eye. The city's prosperity comes at a cost. Fierce rivalries, political machinations, and the ever-looming threat of piracy. You're not just competing with other merchants, you're navigating a labyrinth of alliances and betrayals that would make Machiavelli blush. As you close a deal on a shipment of peppercorns worth its weight in gold, literally, you feel the thrill of success. This is why you do it, why you wake up every morning ready to face the chaos. The allure of riches is intoxicating, but you know better than to let it go to your head. Today's triumph is tomorrow's challenge, and in Venice, the only constant is change. You take a moment to reflect on the city itself. Venice isn't just a backdrop to your life, it's a character in its own right. Built on a series of islands, it's a marvel of engineering and ambition. The city's foundations rest on wooden piles driven deep into the lagoon's muddy bottom, a testament to human ingenuity and sheer stubbornness. Venice shouldn't exist, but it does, and it thrives, just like you. As afternoon turns to evening, you find yourself in the company of fellow merchants, swapping stories and strategies over a glass of wine. It's a chance to unwind, but also to network, to solidify alliances, and to keep an ear to the ground for the latest market trends. Venice is a city that never sleeps, and neither do you. Not really. There's always another deal to be made, another opportunity to seize. As you prepare to head home, the city's beauty takes your breath away. The setting sun casts a warm glow over the canals, turning the water into molten gold. It's a reminder of the wealth and power that flow through Venice, a city that has carved out its place in history through trade, ambition, and a little bit of luck. You head back to your palazzo, the day's events replaying in your mind. You've navigated the complex web of trade routes, closed deals, and perhaps even enjoyed a bit of that bittersweet brew that's becoming all the rage. Tomorrow, it starts all over again. A new day in this city of dreams and deals, where you, a 15th century Venetian merchant, will once again dive into the fray. Sweet dreams, or better yet, prosperous ones. You head back to your palazzo, the day's events replaying in your mind. But as you drift into a restless sleep, let's take a moment to peel back the opulent facade of Venetian trade to reveal the gritty mechanics underneath. Welcome to the economic heartbeat of Venice, where numbers don't just matter, they rule. First up, the Venetian ducat. Picture this, a gleaming gold coin, roughly the size of a quarter, yet with the power to move mountains, or at least unload a ship full of peppercorns. Introduced in 1284, the ducat became the gold standard of its time, literally. With about 3.5 grams of pure gold, it wasn't just currency, it was a promise of unwavering value. The ducat was the Bitcoin of the 15th century, except you could actually hold it, and it didn't crash every time a noble sneezed in Florence. Now, let's talk currency exchange. If you think today's forex market is wild, try navigating the medieval version. Merchants like you had to juggle a dozen different coins, from the Byzantine solidus to the Florentine florin. It was a financial juggling act that could give even the most seasoned accountant a migraine. But you, savvy trader that you are, knew the ropes. You had to. The wrong exchange rate could turn a profitable shipment into a sinking ship faster than you can say Marco Polo. On to the goods themselves, spices and silk. Ah yes, the lifeblood of Venetian trade. Spices weren't just for making bland medieval gruel palatable, they were status symbols, aphrodisiacs, and sometimes even medicinal. Take pepper, for instance. Worth its weight in gold, literally. A single pound of it could cost you one whole Venetian ducat. That's dinner, a show, and a gondola ride for two, all wrapped up in black, wrinkly little berries. Silk, on the other hand, was the fashion statement that screamed, "I've arrived." Imported from the East, each yard of this shimmering fabric was a testament to the endless caravans and treacherous sea routes that brought it to your doorstep. A bolt of silk could set you back several ducats, but it was worth every glinting coin for the status it conferred. After all, what's the point of being rich if you can't flaunt it, right? Of course, with great profit comes great risk. And let's not sugarcoat it. Maritime trade was a high-stakes gamble. Pirates were the Wall Street wolves of the sea, except they didn't just take your money, they took your ship, your crew, and sometimes your dignity. Enter the concept of risk mitigation. Think of it as medieval insurance, but instead of policy documents you had partnerships and guilds. That's right, the solitary merchant, bravely navigating the seas alone, is a romantic myth. In reality, you were part of a sprawling network of alliances and guilds. The Scuola Grande di San Marco was less of a school and more of a traders' union, offering protection and shared resources. These guilds were your safety net, your insurance policy, your get-out-of-jail-free card, minus the jail, hopefully. And speaking of partnerships, let's not forget about the Colleganza. This was a kind of joint venture, where investors pooled resources for a single voyage. If the ship returned laden with treasures, everyone got a slice of the pie. If it sank, well, at least you weren't going down alone. It's the medieval version of diversifying your portfolio, except with actual ships and real pirates. Quite the adrenaline rush, wouldn't you say? Now, let's pivot to the broader picture. Venice wasn't just a city, it was a powerhouse, a brand. With a population hovering around 100,000, it was a melting pot of cultures and ideas. The Venetian government, ever the enterprising ruler, encouraged this mix, knowing that diversity was the secret sauce to commerce. The city thrived on the tension between competition and cooperation, a delicate dance that kept everyone on their toes. But don't let the romance of the canals and the allure of gold coins fool you. Behind the picturesque facade was a city built on cutthroat competition and relentless ambition. You weren't just trading goods. You were trading on your reputation, your alliances, and your ability to read the ever-changing tides of the market. In this world, your word was your bond, and a handshake could be more binding than any contract. Break that trust, and you were as good as sunk. The market was a living entity, and you needed to feel its every heartbeat, anticipate its every move. Today's ally could be tomorrow's competitor, and in Venice, friendships were as fluid as the tides. As you drift off, contemplating the labyrinthine complexities of Venetian trade, remember this: you're not just a merchant, you're a navigator of human nature, a player in the grand game of commerce and survival. You're part of a lineage of traders who carved out an empire from the sea, one ducat at a time. And tomorrow, when the sun rises over the Adriatic, you'll do it all over again, because in Venice, the only thing more constant than change is the lure of gold. But before the Adriatic sun even thinks of peeking over the rooftops, let's pull back the velvet curtain on the real drama of Venice, the social and political high-wire act that makes your mercantile life both exhilarating and exhausting. In this city of masks, not everything is as it seems, and understanding the players on this grand stage is crucial to your survival. First, let's talk about the top dog, or should I say, top doge. This isn't just a fancy title for a local bigwig, we're talking about the most powerful figure in Venice, a position that combines the gravitas of a monarch with the slippery charm of a politician. The Doge, elected for life, is the face of the Venetian Republic, a literal gold-capped figurehead. But here's the kicker. Despite the gilded ceremonies and pomp, the Doge's power is checked at every corner by the Council of Ten, that enigmatic body of elite puppet masters who ensure no one gets too big for their britches. It's like living in a Renaissance soap opera, where every move is watched and every word can tip the scales. The Council of Ten is as mysterious as it is menacing. Established in 1310, it was meant to thwart treason and maintain order, but over the centuries it evolved or devolved into a shadow government. Imagine a group of 10 individuals with the power to decide your fate, meeting in secret, their deliberations as opaque as Venetian glass. For you, the ambitious merchant, this means walking a fine line. A nod from the council can open doors, but a frown could slam them shut so fast your head will spin. It's a delicate dance, part chess game, part tightrope walk, and all about keeping your enemies closer. Now, Venetian diplomacy is another beast entirely. The city-state's foreign policy is as shrewd as its trade practices. Think of Venice as the Switzerland of the Renaissance, neutral when it suits, but always with an eye on the bottom line. As a merchant, you're not just selling goods, you're a piece in the grand puzzle of Venetian diplomacy, where alliances are as fluid as the tides. Whether it's placating the Ottomans or charming the French, your business dealings are inevitably tangled with the Republic's broader geopolitical chess game. One wrong move, and you could find yourself on the wrong side of a diplomatic spat, a risky proposition when your livelihood depends on free flow through the Mediterranean. But enough of politics and power plays. Let's shift gears to the social life of Venice, that intoxicating blend of culture, commerce, and camaraderie. As a merchant, your social circle is as important as your trade routes. You're rubbing elbows with a fascinating mix of individuals, other merchants of course, but also artists, scholars, and the occasional noble looking to dabble in commerce. Venice is a city where intellect and wit are as prized as ducats. A clever quip at a dinner party could land you a lucrative partnership, or at least an invitation to the next soirée. Speaking of soirée, the Venetian social calendar is packed, if you know where to look. From lavish masquerades to intimate gatherings in private palazzos, every event is an opportunity to network, to exchange not just pleasantries, but vital information. And let's not forget the arts. Venice is a cultural mecca, where music, literature and painting flourish, supported by patrons who see art as both a status symbol and a genuine passion. As a merchant, investing in the arts isn't just about philanthropy, it's a strategic move. Sponsoring a promising artist or hosting a recital can elevate your social standing and cement alliances with influential figures. In this world, appearances matter. Your attire, your home, your possessions all speak volumes about your place in the social hierarchy. A well-tailored outfit isn't just about fashion, it's a statement of success, a testament to your trading acumen. And let's not forget the food. Venetian cuisine is a tapestry of flavors woven from the diverse threads of its trading empire. Exotic spices, fresh seafood, and rich wines grace your table, a daily reminder of the city's far-reaching influence. Yet, beneath the veneer of opulence lies a city that thrives on competition as much as collaboration. The merchant class is a fraternity of frenemies where alliances are as crucial as rivalries. Today's trading partner could be tomorrow's competitor, and you must always strike a balance between cooperation and self-preservation. It's a world where gossip spreads faster than the plague, and reputation is everything. A single misstep can tarnish your standing, while a well-placed rumor can topple a rival. As you navigate this complex social landscape, remember that Venice is a city built on paradoxes. It's a place where wealth and poverty coexist, where the grandeur of the palaces contrasts starkly with the crowded alleys and bustling markets. The city is a living entity, constantly evolving, its fortunes ebbing and flowing with the tides of trade and politics. And you, dear merchant, are part of this grand tapestry, weaving your own story into the rich fabric of Venetian life. So, as the night deepens and the city's canals glisten under the moonlight, take a moment to reflect on your place in this intricate web. You're not just a trader, you're a diplomat, a socialite, and a strategist, navigating a world where every decision counts. In Venice, the stakes are high, but so are the rewards. And as the dawn approaches, you prepare to dive back into the fray, ready to seize the day or, at the very least, a good deal on peppercorns. And as the dawn approaches, you prepare to dive back into the fray, ready to seize the day or, at the very least, a good deal on peppercorns. But hold on to your ducats, because the world of Venetian trade isn't just gondolas and gold coins. It's time to wade into the murky waters of piracy and theft, the maritime equivalent of a bad day at the stock exchange. Now, when you hear the word pirate, you might picture a swashbuckling rogue with a penchant for parrots and plunder. Thanks, Hollywood. But the truth is, real pirates were less Johnny Depp and more Jack the Ripper of the seas. These weren't lovable rogues, they were ruthless opportunists with a knack for turning your hard-earned cargo into their ill-gotten gains. Let's talk numbers. By the 15th century, piracy was a well-oiled machine in the Mediterranean. According to some estimates, pirate attacks could cost Venetian merchants up to 40% of their profits. That's not just a dent in your pocket, it's a cannonball through your financial ship. Imagine working out the logistics of a trade deal, negotiating the best price for your silk and spices, and then, bam! A pirate ship appears on the horizon, and suddenly you're left with a fistful of broken dreams and an empty hold. To combat this, Venice didn't just sit back and hope for the best. It armed its merchant vessels, turning them into floating fortresses. Think of it as the medieval version of riding shotgun, except the shotgun is a cannon and the stakes are life and death. These armed escorts, known as galleys, were crewed by hired muscle whose job was to ensure your goods made it from point A to point B without being rerouted to Pirate Cove. But muscle wasn't the only form of protection. Enter the world of medieval insurance, a concept as revolutionary then as the iPhone is now. Venetian merchants would band together to create insurance pools. You'd pay a premium, and if your ship went missing, you'd receive compensation. It was a financial safety net, But like all insurance, it came with its own headaches. Premiums could run as high as 20% of your cargo's value, and filing a claim? Let's just say it was about as easy as getting a tax refund in a recession. And what about those notorious pirates themselves? Contrary to popular belief, they weren't all disgruntled sailors with a grudge against merchants. Many were actually privateers. Pirates with a legal stamp of approval from a government looking to undermine a rival's trade. It's piracy with a veneer of respectability, like stealing your neighbour's Wi-Fi because the government said it was okay. These privateers operated under a letter of marque, a kind of hall pass for high seas hijinks. Countries like England, France and Spain loved this arrangement. Why wage expensive wars when you can outsource the chaos to a pirate with an agenda? Still, despite these hazards, Venice's maritime trade flourished. Why? Because necessity is the mother of invention and the father of risk-taking. The city-state was a master of adapting to perilous circumstances, tweaking its routes and innovating its defences to outsmart the buccaneers lurking in the shadows. For instance, Venetian merchants often sailed in convoys, much like today's cargo fleets that move in packs to deter modern-day pirates. It was the aquatic version of safety in numbers, and while it didn't eliminate the threat entirely, it certainly made pirates think twice before making a move. Now, let's zoom out and consider the broader implications. Piracy wasn't just a maritime nuisance, it influenced the very fabric of trade. The constant threat prompted merchants to reroute their journeys, sometimes adding weeks to their voyages to avoid pirate-infested waters. This wasn't just a logistical headache, it drove up the cost of goods. If you've ever wondered why your medieval ancestors paid a king's ransom for a pinch of pepper, blame it on those pesky pirates. But here's where it gets interesting. In this high-stakes game of cat and mouse, the pirates themselves inadvertently shaped the global economy. By forcing trade routes to shift, they contributed to the development of alternative paths and new trading hubs. Necessity, once again, gave birth to innovation. Cities like Lisbon and Antwerp flourished as merchants sought new, safer ports of call. It's a classic case of unintended consequences, where the very threat that aimed to stifle commerce ended up expanding it. Now, before you start feeling too sorry for those poor merchants battling the pirate menace, remember this. Venetian traders weren't exactly innocent lambs. They were as cunning as the foxes in the Doge's court. The same merchants who feared pirates at sea were often the ones engaging in skullduggery on land. Smuggling was rampant, and trade sanctions were more like guidelines than hard rules. Think of it as the medieval version of creative accounting. In this world of double-dealing, the lines between legitimate trade and illicit trafficking were as blurred as a foggy morning on the Grand Canal. Venetian merchants might decry piracy, but they weren't above bending a rule or two if it meant an extra ducat in their coffers. When the stakes are high, sometimes the ends justify the means, or so they told themselves as they navigated the treacherous waters of commerce. So, as you ponder the life of a 15th-century Venetian merchant, a life fraught with danger, deception, and the occasional pirate raid, remember this. Venice wasn't just a city of canals and commerce. It was a living organism, constantly adapting to the challenges of its time. The merchants were its lifeblood, pulsing through its veins, navigating not just the physical waters, but the murky depths of human ambition and greed. And as you prepare to face another day in this cutthroat world, take heart. For every risk, there's a reward, and for every pirate, there's a profit. It's a dance as old as time, and as the sun rises over the Adriatic, you're ready to waltz once more into the fray, because in Venice, the only certainty is uncertainty, and the thrill of the chase is its own reward. As the last vestiges of sunlight dip beneath the Venetian horizon, you stand at the edge of your palazzo, gazing at the city that never seems to rest. It's a moment of reflection, where the day's victories and trials swirl together like the currents of the Adriatic. Today was a good day, profitable, yes, but also a reminder of the razor's edge on which your fortunes balance. You've navigated the tempestuous waters of commerce, battled the spectres of piracy, and danced with diplomacy, all in the pursuit of that ever-elusive ducat. Now, let's pivot to the broader narrative, the grand tapestry of Venetian influence on global trade. You see, Venice wasn't just a city, it was a phenomenon, a mercantile superpower that left an indelible mark on the world. In its heyday, the city-state controlled over 3,000 ships, a maritime juggernaut that turned the Mediterranean into its personal playground. Venetian merchants didn't just trade goods, they traded ideas, laying the groundwork for a global economy that transcended borders and cultures. But like any gripping saga, there's a twist. The same forces that propelled Venice to the zenith of commercial success also sowed the seeds of its decline. By the late 15th century, the world was changing faster than a gondola on high tide. The discovery of the Americas and the opening of new sea routes by the Portuguese around the Cape of Good Hope shifted the centre of trade from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic. It was as if someone had pulled the plug, and Venice's once bustling waterways began to feel the strain. Let's talk specifics. The peppercorns and silks that once flowed through Venetian hands began finding alternate passages, bypassing the city's tolls and tariffs. This wasn't just a hiccup, it was an economic earthquake. By the 16th century, Venice's share of the spice trade had plummeted from a staggering 80% to less than 20%. That's like watching your prize stock crash overnight, only there's no bailout in sight. Venice's decline was further compounded by the rise of powerful nation-states. The Republic found itself caught between the Ottoman Empire to the east and burgeoning European states to the west. It was a geopolitical squeeze that even the shrewdest Venetian diplomat couldn't untangle. Wars drained the treasury, and while Venice was no stranger to conflict, the scale and frequency of these battles strained its resources like never before. The Battle of Lepanto in 1571, for instance, was a costly victory against the Ottomans that left the city financially and physically exhausted. As the city grappled with external pressures, internal strife simmered beneath the surface. The once unified merchant class began to fracture as wealth concentrated in the hands of a few powerful families. This economic polarization wasn't just a Venetian problem, it was a microcosm of a global shift. The age of the individual merchant was giving way to the rise of commercial empires and chartered companies, like the Dutch East India Company, that operated on a scale Venice couldn't match. But here's the kicker. While Venice's economic power waned, its cultural legacy flourished. The city became a beacon of art, music and architecture, a Renaissance jewel that continues to captivate the world to this day. The very canals that once carried the lifeblood of trade became the muse of poets and painters. This cultural renaissance wasn't just a consolation prize, it was a testament to the city's resilience, a reminder that while economies may falter, the human spirit endures. So, what does this all mean for us, sitting here in the 21st century? Venice's story is a masterclass in adaptation and reinvention, a narrative of highs and lows that mirrors the ebbs and flows of history itself. The city's rise and fall remind us that even the mightiest empires are vulnerable to the tides of change. It's a narrative we see echoed in today's global economy, where technological advancements and geopolitical shifts continue to reshape the landscape. As you prepare to close this chapter on Venetian history, take a moment to savor the complexity of this remarkable city. Venice was a place of contradictions, a city built on water that defied the elements, a trading powerhouse that became an artistic haven. Its legacy is a mosaic of triumphs and tribulations, a story as intricate as the lace for which it was famous. And as you drift off to sleep, lulled by the gentle lapping of water against stone, remember that in Venice the tides of commerce and culture never truly sleep. They are ever present, whispering stories of the past, guiding the dreams of the future. In this city of dreams and deals, you are not just a spectator, but a participant, a custodian of a legacy that continues to ripple through time. As the sun sets on your day, it rises on a new horizon of possibilities, ready to be explored. Sweet dreams, and may they be as rich and varied as the history of Venice itself. Roosters might still be snuggled under their feathers, but the 14th century English fisherman knows how to rise before those slackers. The sun barely peeks over the horizon, casting a muted glow over your village, casting long shadows that dance like they've had one too many ales. You're up, thanks to the harsh clanging of a handbell, your medieval alarm clock. It's time to shake off the sleep, or at least pretend to, because fish don't catch themselves. Your village is small, tight-knit, and smells like every fish market you've ever imagined. Welcome to life on the medieval coast, where the air is salty, the work is gritty, and the pay, well, let's just say you're not exactly rolling in gold coins. But hey, you're a fisherman, not a knight. You start your day with a breakfast that's as thrilling as a medieval dance party, porridge, a simple hearty affair that's basically oats and water, maybe some honey if you're feeling fancy. Forget about bacon or eggs. Those are luxuries for the nobility, not for you, the salt-of-the-earth fisherfolk. Now, about those tools of the trade. In your hands, you'll find a cobble, no, not a cobbler's tool, but a boat. It's a flat-bottomed beauty, perfect for the shallow waters of the North Sea. Built by hand, of course, because how else would you craft a vessel in the 1300s? The cobble is the medieval version of a versatile SUV, handling choppy waters and shallow stretches with ease. It's made from oak or pine, materials sourced locally, because Amazon Prime won't be a thing for about 700 years. Crafting this baby is no small feat. It takes skill, patience, and a bit of luck that the wood doesn't warp. Fishing tools are a medley of nets, traps, and lines. Nets, often woven by the women of the village, are your bread and butter. These aren't your run-of-the-mill nets, though. They're crafted with care, using flax or hemp, and are repaired more often than your favourite pair of socks. You've got hooks, too, made of iron or bone, because stainless steel is merely a twinkle in the future's eye. And let's not forget the lines, painstakingly twisted from horsehair or the finest fibres you can scrounge. As you prepare your gear, you can't help but consider the tides and weather. Today's forecast? Look up. No satellites here, just the wisdom passed down through generations, and maybe a bit of guesswork. The sea is as unpredictable as a medieval monarch. It can turn on you at any moment. Timing your fishing with the tides is crucial. Low tide? Good luck getting your boat out. High tide? Perfect timing to cast your nets. And then there's the weather. Is it cloudy? Rainy? Windy? Each condition demands a different strategy, and you've got to read the sky like it's an ancient manuscript. The significance of these natural phenomena can't be overstated. They dictate your livelihood, your survival. Without understanding the tides, you'd be as lost as a knight without a horse. It's a high-stakes game where a wrong move could mean no fish, no money, and no food. Yet there's an art to it, a rhythm that ties you to the sea, like a dance you've practiced 1,000 times. As you ready the cobble, you nod to your fellow fishermen. Each one of them is a walking encyclopedia of sea lore and hard-earned wisdom. They've faced storms that would make a modern sailor weep and lived to tell the tale. They're your comrades, your competition, and sometimes your greatest allies in this watery world. The sun is now a full participant in the day's proceedings, casting its golden glow over the village, but you're not basking in its warmth. No, you're getting ready to push off, to face whatever the sea has in store. You've got your porridge-fueled energy, your handcrafted cobble, and a sky that promises, well, something. You'll find out soon enough. So there you are, poised to take on the day, a cog in the great medieval fishing machine. The romance of fishing is undeniably appealing, but let's not kid ourselves, it's also a grind, a relentless pursuit dictated by forces far beyond your control. You're not just a fisherman, you're a gambler, a meteorologist, and a master of tides, all rolled into one. And as you push off from the shore, you're ready to see what the sea has in store for you today. And just like that, you're off, leaving the comforting embrace of the shore behind. You venture into the vast, unpredictable expanse of the North Sea. It might seem romantic to the landlubbers, but you know better. Out here, you're a humble player in a grand, aquatic theatre where the sea writes the script, and trust me, it's not always a comedy. Let's dive right into the star attractions of this marine stage, the fish. Think of them as both your nemesis and your ticket to survival. The medieval menu mainly features two heavyweights, herring and cod. Herring is your bread and butter, or perhaps more accurately, your porridge and honey. These slippery little fellows are a staple because they're abundant, relatively easy to catch, and best of all, they can be preserved by salting. Cod? Well, that's the big fish in the sea, literally and economically. Cod can grow to a hefty 100 kilograms and are the medieval equivalent of striking oil. Their dried, salted form stockfish keeps for ages, perfect for long winters or trade with far-flung lands. But why, you might ask, the focus on these particular fish? Ah, this is where the church enters stage left. See, in the 14th century, the church wielded influence over everything, including your dinner plate. With around 140 fasting days a year, when meat was off the menu, fish became the go-to alternative. This wasn't just a suggestion, it was divine decree. So, herring and cod weren't just fish, they were ecclesiastical edicts manifesting in scales and fins. Now, catching these fish requires more than just dropping a net and hoping for the best. You need to have the cunning of a fox and the patience of a saint. Here's the deal. Herring travel in schools so dense they could rival the London rush hour. Your task is to locate them in the vastness of the sea, which is no small feat. Cod, on the other hand, are more solitary, requiring a bit of finesse and a hefty dose of luck. It's a dance of skill and serendipity, with the occasional misstep sending you home empty-handed. Of course, the sea isn't all fish and glory. It's also a realm of danger, wrapped in mystery, and often topped with a generous sprinkle of peril. The North Sea is notorious for its mood swings, flipping from calm to tempestuous faster than you can say shipwreck. The medieval fisherman's life was full of risks, storms that could toss your coble around like a toy, and treacherous rocks lurking just below the surface, waiting to claim an unsuspecting vessel. Shipwrecks were all too common, a grim reminder of the sea's capricious nature. And then there are the superstitions that cling to fishermen like barnacles to a hull. When you're at the mercy of the elements, you tend to lean on rituals and beliefs to feel a semblance of control. Whistling on a boat? That's a no-go. It's said to conjure up storms. Bananas on board? Forget about it. They're believed to be bad luck, a notion that likely originated from tales of doomed voyages. Fishermen might even refuse to set sail on certain days, believing them to be cursed. Who needs weather forecasts when you've got centuries of superstition to guide you? Yet, amidst all this, there's an undeniable allure to the sea. It's a place where fortunes can be made and legends born. The romance of the sea is real, but so are its dangers. It's a place where the line between life and death is drawn with the thinnest of nets. Every day is a new gamble, a fresh roll of the dice in the grand casino that is the ocean. As you cast your nets, you're not just fishing for today's catch. You're part of an age-old tradition, a living link in a chain that stretches back through generations. Every herring you snare, every cod you wrangle is a testament to the enduring human spirit, the drive to conquer the unknown, to wrest sustenance from the sea's depths. With each pull of the net, the day inches forward, the sun climbing higher, casting its watchful eye over your efforts. The sea is alive beneath you, a living tapestry of movement and sound. It's beautiful, yes, but also indifferent. It promises nothing, takes everything, and leaves you with whatever scraps it deems you worthy of. But for a medieval fisherman, that's just another day on the job. You embrace it all, the risk, the reward, the romance, and the reality. So, as the day stretches on, you remain at the mercy of the sea, navigating the salty stage with all the skill and courage you can muster. Because in this watery world, survival isn't just about catching fish. It's about understanding the ocean's whims, respecting its power, and maybe, just maybe, finding a little bit of magic in its depths. With nets brimming and the sun tipping its hat to midday, you point the coble's nose back toward the shore. The sea is being kind today, or at least not downright hostile, and you're returning with a decent haul. As the coble crunches onto the pebbled beach, you're greeted by the sight of your village, a motley collection of thatched roofs and twisting lanes. This is home, where the scent of fish mingles with wood smoke and the chatter of gulls provides a constant soundtrack. You're not alone in this daily ritual. As the boats land, the community comes alive. The village is a hive of activity, a medieval grand central station, but with more mud and fewer schedules. Every hand has a role to play in the grand endeavour that is fish processing. The scene is a tapestry of industry and camaraderie, with a dash of chaos thrown in for good measure. Enter the women of the village, the unsung heroines of this aquatic economy. While you've been battling the sea, they've been preparing for your return. With the catch now ashore, they spring into action. Gutting, cleaning, and salting the fish is a task that requires speed, skill, and a strong stomach. This isn't just busy work, it's an essential cog in the wheel of medieval survival. These women are the backbone of the fishing industry, ensuring the catch is ready for market or storage. The fish, once cleaned, is laid out for drying or packed in salt nature's original preservative. Herring by the dozen are threaded onto lines, a sight that would make any medieval foodie's heart sing. Salted fish, you see, is medieval gold. It's portable, it's storable, and it's tradable. Fish isn't just food, it's currency, and the salty scent of herring is the smell of economic opportunity. Now, let's reel in the economic importance of this piscine bounty. Fish, particularly herring and cod, are the movers and shakers of medieval diets. With meat off the table for much of the year, thanks to the church's fasting edicts, fish becomes the mainstay. It's the protein that keeps the peasants ploughing and the lords lounging. In a world where famine is never more than a bad harvest away, fish is a bulwark against hunger. But the story doesn't end at the village edge. No, the fish you've caught are bound for far-flung markets. Enter the fishmongers, the medieval middlemen of the sea. These savvy traders are the lifeline between your village and the wider world. They navigate a labyrinth of taxes and regulations, all designed to keep the crown's coffers full. Every fish sold is subject to tolls, duties and tariffs. It's a bureaucratic dance as intricate as a courtly ball, and just as perilous. Trade routes snake across the land, with salted fish making its way to bustling urban centres. London, with its teeming streets and endless hunger, is a prime destination. Here, fishmongers haggle and barter with the skill of seasoned diplomats. Prices fluctuate like the tide, influenced by factors as varied as weather, supply, and who's currently waging war with whom. In this medieval marketplace, fish is more than just a meal, it's a centerpiece of trade and politics. It's a commodity that can sway fortunes and feed armies. The humble herring, preserved in salt, becomes a key player on the economic stage. And cod? It's the heavyweight champion, shipped as far as the icy waters of the Baltic and the sunny shores of the Mediterranean. But let's not romanticize it too much. The fish trade is as cutthroat as any medieval battlefield. Fishmongers navigate a treacherous world of market competition and shifting alliances. They're as likely to be undone by a competitor's sharp practice as by a sudden storm that spoils their wares. It's a world where fortunes are made and lost with the toss of a net or the flick of a ledger. Yet, amidst this hustle and bustle, there's a sense of community and shared purpose. The village thrives on the rhythm of the sea, its fortunes rising and falling with the tides. Every catch is a communal achievement, every meal a testament to the symbiotic relationship between land and sea. The fish you haul from the ocean sustains not just your family, but the entire village, feeding bodies and bolstering spirits. As the afternoon sun dips toward the horizon, the village settles into a contented hum. The day's work is done, and the fruits of your labour are salted, stored, or sold. It's a moment of respite in the relentless cycle of life, a brief pause before the next day's challenges. The sea will beckon again at dawn, and you'll answer its call, driven by necessity and the promise of another successful catch. In this medieval world, fish is both sustenance and sustainer, a simple creature that underpins an entire way of life. It's a story of survival, of community, and of the enduring connection between human endeavour and the natural world. And while the romance of the sea is undeniable, so too is the stark reality of its demands. As the village settles for the night, the cycle continues, an age-old dance between man and ocean that will play out again with the morning light. As the village settles for the night, the cycle continues, an age-old dance between man and ocean that will play out again with the morning light. But while the sea is a vast stage for the day's drama, the real script of your life is written on land, in the shadow of the feudal system. Ah, the feudal system. Medieval England's answer to a corporate hierarchy, but with more mud and fewer memos. This is where your fishing rights and obligations are penned, not in ink, but in the rigid lines of social order. You see, in the 14th century, land wasn't just dirt and grass, it was power. Most of the land along the coast, including the precious fishing spots, was owned by the nobility or the church. And if you wanted to fish there, you needed their blessing, or rather, their permission slip, which usually came with strings attached. It was like dealing with a landlord who also happened to control your livelihood. Talk about a power move. Fishing rights were often granted as part of a larger feudal obligation. Maybe you owed a portion of your catch to the local lord, or perhaps you were bound by duty to participate in seasonal repairs of his manor house. In some cases, you needed to provide military service because nothing says medieval fisherman like swapping a net for a sword. It was a tangled web of duties and privileges, with you, the humble fisherman, firmly caught in the middle. Feudal obligations aside, there were also guilds to consider. Picture them as medieval trade unions, But instead of negotiating for healthcare benefits, they were ensuring you didn't sell fish on the sly. In towns and cities, fishing guilds regulated everything from the quality of the catch to the pricing and sale. They set the standards, and if you wanted to hawk your herring at the market, you needed to play by their rules. It was a system designed to protect the trade, but also to ensure a tidy profit for those at the top. And let's not forget the legal disputes that could arise over these watery territories. Fishing rights were a contentious issue, and if you thought modern property disputes were a headache, try navigating medieval ones. Imagine trying to prove your ancestral right to a particular stretch of river when the only evidence is an old family tale and a stone marker washed away by the tide. These disputes could drag on for years, sometimes resolved by the local court, other times by a well-placed bribe or a strategic marriage alliance. It was a game of thrones played out in fish scales and seaweed. But then came the Black Death, sweeping across Europe like a grim reaper with a penchant for chaos. By the time it reached England in 1348, it was a full-blown medieval horror show. The plague wiped out an estimated 30–60% of Europe's population, leaving a wake of empty fields and silent villages. For fishermen, the impact was seismic. With fewer people to feed, demand for fish plummeted. Markets contracted faster than a fishnet with a hole, leaving many fishing communities struggling to stay afloat. However, the Black Death also shook the feudal system to its core. With so many lives lost, labour became a precious commodity. Suddenly you, the fisherman, had leverage. Wages began to rise as lords and landowners competed for workers to till their fields and man their boats. It was a rare silver lining in an otherwise bleak cloud, giving you a taste of economic power that would have been unthinkable just years before. Yet with opportunity came risk. The instability of the times meant that social and political upheaval was never far from the surface. Laws were enacted to freeze wages and tie labourers to the land, desperate attempts to claw back control. But the genie was out of the bottle, and the old order was facing challenges it had never anticipated. So, as you stand on the shore, looking out at the endless horizon, it's clear that the sea isn't your only battleground. The land is fraught with its own perils, a web of obligations and opportunities, where each decision could tip the balance in a world teetering on the brink of change. The romance of the sea may lure you with its promises, but the reality of life on land is a constant reminder that the true struggle lies in navigating the intricate dance of power and survival. And while the sun dips below the horizon, casting the world in shades of twilight, the future feels as unpredictable as the tides. Tomorrow the sea will call again, offering its bounty to those brave enough to venture out. But tonight, in the quiet moments before sleep, you ponder the intricate tapestry of your world, woven with ambition, duty, and the eternal quest for stability, in a world that refuses to stand still. The dance continues, and you, the medieval fisherman, are both its participant and its witness, steering through the centuries with a steady hand and a hopeful heart. As the night deepens, you ponder the broader implications of your labour beyond just the catch of the day. Medieval fishing isn't just a livelihood, it's an intricate web of environmental, technological, and cultural threads that weave through centuries. Let's dive into this tapestry with a splash of reality and a dash of humour. First up, the environmental impact. Picture the medieval coastlines teeming with fish. Not because ancient fish had a penchant for social gatherings, but because human populations were smaller, and fishing practices, though relentless, were limited by rudimentary technology. Yet, even in the 14th century, the seeds of overfishing were being sown. With a growing appetite for herring and cod, medieval fishermen were unwittingly testing the limits of marine ecosystems. Sure, they weren't armed with industrial trawlers that vacuum the ocean floor, but give a man a net and a reason, like 140 fasting days, and he'll find a way to overfish. The impact wasn't just local. As fish stocks dwindled, communities began to feel the pinch. The Black Death might have given fish a temporary reprieve, but as populations rebounded, so did the pressure on marine life. It's a tale as old as time, humans, and their relentless pursuit of more. And while medieval fishing methods weren't the ecological wrecking balls we wield today, they set the stage for future exploitation. Technologically speaking, medieval fishermen were no slackers. Their tools, from the cobble to the hand-woven nets, were marvels of their time. designed to maximize the catch with minimal materials. Fast forward a few centuries, and the evolution of fishing gear is a testament to human ingenuity and our insatiable hunger. Steam-powered vessels, motorized trawlers, sonar. Each advancement promised to make fishing more efficient, and boy did it deliver. But with progress came problems. By the 19th century, whaling ships were plundering the seas with a ruthlessness that would make a Viking blush. The 20th century saw the rise of factory ships capable of processing and freezing thousands of tons of fish. Today, commercial fishing fleets are like aquatic armies, equipped with technology that would have medieval fishermen spinning in their nets. Overfishing became not just a possibility, but an inevitability, as the race to meet global demand outpaced the ocean's ability to replenish itself. Yet, amidst this technological onslaught, the cultural legacy of fishing communities endures. The rhythm of the tides, the camaraderie of the catch, the shared stories of triumph and loss. These are the threads that bind fishing communities across time. From medieval villages to modern coastal towns, fishing has shaped identities and economies, creating a cultural fabric as rich and varied as the seas themselves. Consider the folklore and rituals that have sprung up around fishing, a testament to its enduring place in human culture. From the mermaid myths of old to the superstitious rituals of modern fishermen, the sea remains a source of mystery and inspiration. And while the romance of the sea is undeniable, the reality is never far behind. Fishing is a harsh mistress, demanding respect and resilience from those who seek her bounty. Now, let's cast our gaze on modern fishing practices. The contrast is as stark as a herring in a barrel of cod. Today, the global fishing industry is a behemoth, valued at over $150 billion annually, with fleets scouring oceans to feed a population that has ballooned to over 7 billion. The challenges are immense: overfishing, habitat destruction, bycatch, and climate change. It's a high-stakes game of sustainability, where the rules are still being written. Yet, there's hope on the horizon. Sustainable fishing practices, marine conservation efforts, and technological innovations promise a future where fishing and environmental stewardship go hand in hand. Quotas, protected areas, and eco-friendly gear are part of a new wave of thinking that aims to balance human needs with the ocean's health. It's a complex dance, requiring cooperation and commitment from all corners of the globe. So, as you stand on the cusp of today and tomorrow, it's clear that the legacy of medieval fishing is both a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration. The lessons of the past of balance, respect, and community are more relevant than ever. The sea may be vast and unpredictable, but it is also a mirror, reflecting our choices and challenging us to do better. In the end, the story of fishing is the story of humanity itself. Our struggles, our triumphs, and our eternal quest to understand and thrive in a world of constant change. As the night winds down and sleep beckons, you find solace in the knowledge that, like the fishermen of old, you're part of an unbroken chain, navigating the tides of history with courage and hope. And tomorrow, when the sea calls again, you'll be ready to answer, armed with the wisdom of the past and the promise of a brighter future. Ancient Egypt might just be the original overachiever when it comes to turning desert into farmland, long before modern-day Silicon Valley decided to make sandboxes out of software. At the heart of this ancient agricultural miracle was the Nile River, a 4,100-mile-long life-giver that was as integral to Egyptian success as Wi-Fi is to millennials today. This colossal river wasn't just a source of water, it was an all-you-can-eat buffet of nutrient-rich silt, courtesy of annual floods that seemed like divine intervention, but were really just the earth doing its thing. Now, let's pump the brakes on the magic here, because while it's tempting to picture the Nile's floods as a kind of cosmic hug from the gods, the reality is a bit more earth science. The annual inundation was as predictable as clockwork, stemming from the Earth's axial tilt and the monsoon rains of East Africa. Sure, the Egyptians threw a few prayers and rituals in there for good measure. After all, who doesn't love a good party? But this wasn't just about appeasing a capricious river deity. It was about understanding and harnessing the natural world like the ancient pros they were. Think about it. Every year, typically between June and September, the Nile would overflow its banks. This wasn't just any minor trickle, it was a full-blown transformation, turning barren land into fertile fields ready for sowing. When the waters receded, they left behind a layer of rich, dark silt that was essentially the Egyptian version of Miracle Grow. This black gold was the secret sauce that allowed the Egyptians to grow everything from emmer wheat to barley, feeding their civilization and laying the groundwork for a society that would last for millennia. Forget about pyramids for a second. This was the real foundation of their world. Now, before we get too far ahead, let's knock down another myth. The Nile wasn't just a passive player waiting around to flood the plains. The Egyptians, with their engineering prowess, turned these seasonal waters into a year-round resource. They developed a sophisticated system of basins and canals to manage the water supply, which was about as advanced as you could get without a degree in civil engineering. They didn't just wait for the Nile to do its thing. They actively shaped their landscape to suit their needs. Smart cookies, those Egyptians. So, while the romantic image of a benevolent Nile may be comforting, the truth is much more impressive. The Egyptians didn't just rely on divine favor. They rolled up their sleeves and got to work, turning the unpredictable into the reliable. This is where the real magic lies. Not in the whims of gods, but in the hands of people who understood their environment and made it work for them. They harnessed the power of the Nile with a mix of ingenuity and back-breaking labor, creating an agricultural system that was the envy of the ancient world. And speaking of envy, let's not forget the political angle. The Nile's predictable bounty wasn't just a boon for farmers, it was a source of power and stability for the rulers of Egypt. Control the water, and you control the food. Control the food, and you've got a pretty firm grip on the populace. Pharaohs wielded this power with a deft touch, ensuring their subjects and their coffers were well fed. But they weren't just tyrants with a penchant for irrigation, they were also savvy negotiators and administrators who knew how to keep the machine running smoothly. This brings us to the social aspect, because while the Nile may have been the backbone of Egyptian agriculture, the people were its lifeblood. It took thousands of laborers to dig the canals, maintain the basins, and ensure that everything ran like a well-oiled chariot. These weren't just nameless workers toiling in obscurity, they were the unsung heroes of an agricultural revolution that fed an empire. Their story is one of resilience and hard work, a testament to what can be achieved when human will meets nature's bounty. So, next time you think of the Nile, remember, it wasn't just a river. It was a mighty force that shaped a civilization, not through divine whimsy, but through the hard work and ingenuity of its people. The Egyptians didn't wait for miracles. They made them happen, one irrigation canal at a time. And that, my friends, is where the real magic of ancient Egypt lies. If you thought the pyramids were the main stage in Egypt's grand historical play, well, prepare for a plot twist. Enter the Shaduf, an ancient contraption that might lack the architectural glamour of the Great Pyramid, but packs a punch and utility. This simple yet ingenious device was the ancient Egyptian version of a hydraulic crane, a lever system used to lift water from the Nile into irrigation canals. Imagine a long wooden beam balanced on a pivot with a bucket on one end and a counterweight on the other. It was like the seesaw you used to ride in the playground, except instead of giggles and scraped knees, this one produced food and prosperity. The Shaduf was a game changer, allowing farmers to water their fields even when the Nile wasn't feeling particularly generous. And let's be honest, having a reliable irrigation tool was far more practical than waiting for divine intervention every time the crops needed a drink. With the Shaduf, Egyptian farmers could extend their growing season beyond the flood period, effectively giving Mother Nature a nudge and saying, "We've got this, thanks." Of course, behind every Shaduf was a hard-working farmer or two. It wasn't exactly a high-tech operation that ran itself. Each Shaduf required manual labor, and lots of it. But compared to hauling water with buckets alone, it was like upgrading from a flip phone to a smartphone. The toiling farmers became the unsung heroes of this agricultural symphony, each pull of the Shaduf's beam a note in the melody of survival and success. Now, if you think the Shaduf was impressive, wait till you hear about the basin irrigation system. It's like going from a garage band to a full-blown orchestra. Basin irrigation was the Egyptians' answer to the challenge of large-scale agriculture in an unforgiving landscape. They didn't just build canals, they constructed a network of embankments and basins that could capture and hold floodwater. These basins could be as large as 50 acres, which, for reference, is roughly the size of 37 American football fields. That's a whole lot of cornflakes. This system allowed the Egyptians to manage water distribution with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. Each basin was strategically flooded and drained to maximize efficiency, ensuring every drop of water was put to good use. Farmers could cultivate multiple crops a year, a luxury that few other ancient civilizations could boast. With this kind of innovation, it's no wonder Egypt was often referred to as the breadbasket of the ancient world. But let's not sugarcoat it. Building and maintaining these irrigation systems was no small feat. It required a labor force that would put the construction crews of modern skyscrapers to shame. Thousands of workers were involved in digging canals, reinforcing embankments, and clearing silt. This was a society that ran on muscle and sweat, not machinery. It's estimated that during peak agricultural seasons, up to 80% of the Egyptian workforce was engaged in farming and its related activities. That's an entire civilization rolling up its sleeves and getting to work. And, of course, someone had to foot the bill. The economic cost of maintaining these irrigation systems was significant. The state organized large-scale corvée labor, an ancient form of taxation where citizens paid their dues through labor instead of coin. This wasn't just a weekend community service project. It was a massive, coordinated effort that required meticulous planning and oversight. The political stakes were high too. Control over the irrigation networks meant control over Egypt's agricultural output, and thus its entire economy. This was a power game, as much as a farming one. Pharaohs and their officials wielded this power like a conductor's baton, orchestrating not just crops, but also the loyalty of their subjects. Keep the water flowing, and you keep the people fed. Keep the people fed, and you keep your throne secure. But let's take a moment to bust a few myths. While it's tempting to imagine these ancient labourers as downtrodden slaves, toiling under the whip, the reality is more nuanced. Many of them were conscripted peasants, working the land they relied on for their own sustenance. They weren't just building a system for the state, they were securing their own future. It was a complex social contract where labour was exchanged for stability and survival. Not exactly the heartwarming narrative we find in Hollywood epics, but the truth often lacks a dramatic soundtrack. In the grand narrative of ancient Egypt, the true miracle wasn't just the Nile or the pyramids. It was the ordinary people who transformed their environment through sheer determination and ingenuity. They didn't just survive, they thrived in one of the most inhospitable places on earth, turning sand into sustenance. And so, as we leave behind the dusty echoes of ancient labour and look forward to what's next, remember that the real story of Egyptian irrigation isn't just about the water. It's about the hands that guided it, the minds that planned it, and the communities that depended on it. It's a tale of human resilience and resourcefulness, a reminder that even in the harshest of deserts, life can bloom with a little brains and a lot of brawn. So, as we transition from the back-breaking labour of ancient Egyptian workers and their ingenious irrigation systems, let's dive deeper into how all those efforts transformed not just the fields but the very fabric of their society. Imagine a society where controlling water was akin to having the keys to the kingdom. In ancient Egypt, whoever had the water had the power. Literally. It was like holding the remote control to the only TV in the village. And who was holding that remote? The pharaohs, of course. These rulers weren't just sitting pretty on their thrones, draped in gold and eyeliner, waiting for the next pyramid commission. Oh no, they were the original multitaskers, managing not just divine providence, but also the very practical business of keeping their irrigation systems well-oiled and functional. They had to ensure that the Nile's bounty was distributed efficiently, an ancient logistics operation that could rival modern-day supply chains. Now, let's talk numbers. At the height of their power, the pharaohs commanded a workforce that could swell to hundreds of thousands during peak times. Picture a bustling army of workers, all organized like a human ant colony, digging, dredging, and diverting water with an efficiency that would make a Swiss watch blush. This was no small feat, and it required an administrative machine worthy of admiration. The pharaohs were like CEOs with a divine mandate, making sure that every drop of water went where it was supposed to. But it wasn't just about logistics. The control of water was a means to an end, a way to consolidate power and wealth. The pharaohs wielded this control like a maestro with a baton, orchestrating not just the fields but the entire economy. By ensuring a steady food supply, they maintained the loyalty of their subjects and the stability of their reign. It was a simple equation: water equals crops, crops equal food, and food equals power. This was the calculus that kept the wheels of ancient Egypt turning. And let's not forget the divine angle. The pharaohs were seen as god-kings, the living embodiment of Horus, tasked with maintaining Ma'at, the cosmic order. In a world where natural disasters and famines were seen as divine displeasure, the role of the pharaoh was crucial. They were the bridge between the gods and the people, ensuring that the Nile continued to bless their land with its life-giving floods. It was a delicate balance of political savvy and religious duty, with the irrigation system serving as both a symbol and a tool of their divine rule. But here's the kicker. While the image of the pharaoh as a benevolent watermaster might seem like a rosy picture, the reality was a bit more Machiavellian. The centralization of power meant that the pharaohs and their bureaucrats held all the cards. They decided who got water and who didn't, effectively controlling the socio-economic structure of the entire civilization. This wasn't just governance, it was governance with a side of omnipotence. In this hierarchical society, the pharaoh's word was law, but it was the scribes and officials who translated that word into action. These bureaucrats were the unsung heroes, or, depending on your perspective, the unsung villains of this water-based economy. They meticulously recorded water usage, crop yields, and labor allocations on papyrus scrolls with the precision of an Excel spreadsheet. This wasn't just administration. It was the lifeblood of the nation's stability. Now, while it's tempting to paint the pharaohs as enlightened rulers, let's debunk a myth or two. It wasn't all peace, love, and irrigation. The concentration of power in the hands of the few often led to corruption and intrigue, the kind that would make a Game of Thrones episode look like a children's bedtime story. The stakes were high, and the power struggles could be as murky as the Nile's waters during flood season. Yet, despite these challenges, the system worked remarkably well for centuries. The pharaohs maintained control, the fields flourished, and Egypt remained a powerhouse of the ancient world. The socio-political impact of irrigation was profound, shaping not just the landscape, but the very soul of Egyptian civilization. It was a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of stability in an unpredictable world. So, as we prepare to delve even deeper into the intricacies of this ancient society, remember that the story of Egyptian irrigation is more than just a tale of water management. It's a narrative of power, politics, and the eternal struggle to harness nature's bounty. It's about how a civilization thrived in a desert, turning water into wealth and rulers into legends. And as we move forward, we'll continue to peel back the layers of this fascinating story, exploring the intricate dance between humanity and the natural world in the land of the pharaohs. While the pharaohs played their high-stakes game of irrigation poker, there was a less glamorous side to this ancient water wizardry that rarely makes the history books. Let's face it, when you're busy building an empire in the desert, you're bound to hit a few snags along the way. And by snags, I mean environmental headaches that could rival any modern-day climate crisis. You see, in their quest to transform barren wasteland into a lush agricultural paradise, the Egyptians stumbled upon a few unintended consequences. Spoiler alert, Mother Nature doesn't always play nicely. For starters, let's talk salinization, the quiet villain lurking beneath the fertile veneer of the Nile's gift. As the Egyptians diverted water into their fields year after year, salts from the river began to accumulate in the soil. It's like inviting a guest who overstays their welcome and leaves crumbs everywhere, except these crumbs could wreck your crops. Salinization made the once bountiful land less productive over time, turning the agricultural utopia into a salty nightmare. It was a classic case of too much of a good thing, like binge-watching your favorite series until you can't stand it anymore. The Egyptians responded with a bit of trial and error, rotating crops and leaching the soil with fresh water, a kind of ancient detox session. But let's be honest, it was a band-aid on a much larger wound. Then there's soil erosion, the environmental equivalent of a bad haircut that just keeps getting worse. When you're redirecting massive amounts of water, the landscape takes a beating. Erosion became a sneaky saboteur, washing away topsoil and undermining the very foundations of their agricultural success. It's not that the Egyptians were oblivious, they were just dealing with the ancient equivalent of juggling flaming swords while riding a unicycle. To counteract this, they maintained elaborate networks of embankments and canals, like an ancient version of infrastructure maintenance that would put modern city planners to shame. But here's the kicker. These solutions required constant labour and resources, a never-ending cycle of maintenance that tested even the most efficient ancient bureaucracy. It was like trying to stop a leaky faucet with duct tape when what you really needed was a plumber. And just in case you're thinking, well, at least they learned their lesson, let's fast forward a few millennia. Modern agriculture still grapples with these very issues. Salinization and erosion are the unwelcome guests at our environmental dinner table. The irony isn't lost on anyone who's ever filled out a tax return. Humanity's tendency to ignore long-term consequences in favor of short-term gains is as old as the pyramids themselves. But the Egyptians weren't just passive victims of environmental change. They adapted with a resilience that's almost enviable. When the going got tough, they didn't just throw up their hands and blame the gods. They got creative, implementing crop rotations and developing early forms of land management that laid the groundwork for future agricultural practices. It's a testament to the ingenuity of a civilization that knew how to roll with the punches, even when those punches came from Mother Nature herself. Yet, despite their best efforts, the question of sustainability lingered like a phantom at the feast. The Egyptians' irrigation practices were ingenious, but they weren't immune to the law of diminishing returns. As the population grew and demands on the land increased, the strain on their systems became more pronounced. It was a classic case of trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, a struggle that echoes in today's global quest for sustainable agriculture. And let's not sugarcoat it, the environmental challenges faced by ancient Egypt were a double-edged sword. On one hand, they spurred innovation and adaptation, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in an arid landscape. On the other, they highlighted the limits of human control over nature, a humbling reminder that even the mightiest civilizations are at the mercy of the earth's whims. In the end, the story of ancient Egyptian irrigation is both a triumph and a cautionary tale. It's a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of progress, but also a poignant reminder of the delicate balance between civilization and the natural world. So, as we prepare to explore the final chapters of this saga, let's keep in mind that the lessons of the past are etched not just in the sands of Egypt, but in the very fabric of our modern world. As we peer into the shimmering mirage of ancient Egypt's environmental challenges, it's clear that their irrigation prowess was both their crowning glory and their Achilles heel, a paradox that's as relevant today as it was back then. So, buckle up, because the next part of our journey promises to dive deeper into the complexities that shaped this ancient society, a tale of ambition, adaptation, and the eternal dance with nature's unpredictable rhythms. As we transition from ancient Egypt's environmental tightrope walk, let's zoom out and consider the legacy of their irrigation masterpiece. This is where the Nile story goes global, because those ancient Egyptians weren't just toiling away in isolation, they were setting the stage for future civilizations to catch a few irrigation cues. If imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, Egypt should be blushing. To understand the full impact, think of ancient Egypt as the Silicon Valley of the ancient world, but instead of coding apps, they were coding canals. Their innovations didn't just stay within the borders of the land of the pharaohs. No, they flowed outward like the very waters they channeled, influencing neighbors near and far. Take Mesopotamia, for example. The Sumerians were no strangers to irrigation, but when they got wind of Egypt's water management wizardry, they definitely took notes. Although they were separated by deserts and mountains, these civilizations were like competitive neighbors peering over the fence, eager to one-up each other in the irrigation game. And then there's Rome, that ancient empire known for its aqueducts and love of all things grand. While the Romans were busy conquering half the known world, they also borrowed heavily from Egyptian irrigation techniques. They adapted basin irrigation and expanded it to suit their sprawling empire. In fact, the Roman Empire's agricultural backbone owes a little thank you card to the Nile's engineers. They took the concept and ran with it, creating systems that allowed them to feed millions and keep their legions marching across continents. But we're not just talking about a few borrowed ideas here. The influence of Egyptian irrigation practices reached all the way to the Indus Valley civilization, where the idea of controlling water to control destiny took root. It's a classic example of cultural diffusion, where good ideas spread faster than a cat video on social media. This cross-pollination of knowledge underscores the interconnectedness of ancient civilizations, showing that even in ancient times, good ideas were worth spreading far and wide. The ripples of Egypt's irrigation innovations can still be felt today in modern agricultural practices. The concept of crop rotation, soil management, and water conservation that the Egyptians pioneered forms the bedrock of sustainable agriculture. It's like ancient Egypt handed the world a playbook on how to turn inhospitable land into a breadbasket, and we're still using it, albeit with a few more bells and whistles. Now, let's talk about the romanticized view of Egyptian ingenuity, that mystical allure that has captivated imaginations for centuries. Who hasn't marveled at the pyramids and wondered at the golden age of the pharaohs? It's easy to get swept up in the splendor and forget that behind every great achievement was a lot of sweat, toil, and, let's be honest, a fair amount of back pain. The Egyptians didn't just wave a wand and make the desert bloom. They worked for it, day in and day out, with the kind of grit that would make a marathon runner pause for breath. And while the poetic vision of a benevolent Nile blessing its people with abundance is a beautiful one, the reality was a bit grittier. The Egyptians faced challenges that would make even the most seasoned project manager break out in hives. They didn't have modern machinery or technology, just sheer determination and a deep understanding of their environment. It was hard work on a scale that's tough to imagine today, with thousands of workers laboring under the hot sun to keep the irrigation systems running smoothly. This was no Instagram-worthy lifestyle. It was a relentless grind that demanded every ounce of human ingenuity and effort. So, while we acknowledge the grandeur and genius of ancient Egypt, let's not forget the real-world grit that made it all possible. The pharaohs might have been the face of this great civilization, but it was the people, the laborers, the farmers, the engineers, who turned vision into reality. They were the unsung heroes, the backbone of an empire that stood the test of time. As we wrap up this journey through the irrigation wonders of ancient Egypt, it's important to remember that their legacy is more than just a historical footnote. It's a living testament to the power of human innovation, a reminder that even in the harshest environments, we have the capacity to adapt, overcome, and thrive. The Egyptians didn't just leave us with monuments of stone, they left us with a legacy of resilience and resourcefulness. In the end, the story of Egyptian irrigation is both a celebration of human achievement and a cautionary tale about the limits of our control over nature. It's a narrative that resonates today as we grapple with our own environmental challenges, reminding us that while technology and innovation can take us far, it's often the simplest, most ancient solutions that hold the key to our future. So, as you drift off to sleep, with visions of canals and shadows dancing in your head, take comfort in the knowledge that the lessons of the past are never truly forgotten. They're etched in the sands of time, waiting to be rediscovered and reimagined for a new generation. Tycho Brahe's story kicks off with a cosmic bang, quite literally. On the night of August 25, 60, as a 10-year-old Danish nobleman, he experienced something that would send shivers down the spine of any future astronomer, a total solar eclipse. While most kids his age were busy with, well, whatever 16th century kids did for fun, probably not much, young Tycho was busy having his mind blown by the astronomical wonders above. Back then, eclipses weren't just celestial light shows, they were omens, often interpreted as portents of doom or divine messages. For Tycho, though, it was the start of a lifelong romance with the stars. Now, let's not get too romantic about this. Tycho's path to becoming a stargazing legend wasn't paved with stardust and comet tails. Nope, it was more like a cobblestone road with a few potholes and a fair share of detours. Born into the Danish nobility on December 13, 1546, Tycho wasn't exactly expected to be the next big name in astronomy. In fact, a career in politics or the military would have been far more conventional. But Tycho was about as conventional as a unicorn at a horse race. He was the eldest son of Otto Brahe and Bedtime, a family that had its roots firmly planted in the Danish aristocracy, meaning he was basically expected to do noble things, hunt, manage estates, maybe play a lute if he was feeling particularly rebellious. Instead, he set his eyes on the skies. His educational journey was equally unconventional. At the age of 13, he was sent off to the University of Copenhagen, which sounds impressive until you realize that universities back then were less about finding yourself and more about finding a way to avoid getting a sword to the face. The curriculum was the usual mix of rhetoric, philosophy, and theology, with a side dish of Latin that would make any modern student weep. But it was at Copenhagen that Tycho caught a whiff of astronomy, a subject that was still more art than science at the time. In 1562, 2 years after the eclipse, Tycho was shipped off to the University of Leipzig to study law, because who doesn't love a backup plan? Yet, instead of memorizing legal jargon, Tycho spent his nights sleeking out to study the stars. Picture him, a young nobleman, cloaked in mystery and probably a few layers of wool, trying not to freeze under the frosty German sky, all while scribbling furiously in his notebook. It was during these nocturnal escapades that he realized something crucial. The existing astronomical tables, the ones everybody swore by, were about as accurate as a broken sundial on a rainy day. Tycho was itching to fix this cosmic mess, and that itch would lead to revolutionary insights. But before we get to his groundbreaking star charts, let's talk about one of the most infamous episodes of his life. In 1566, the 20-year-old Tycho found himself in a duel. And not just any duel, this one was over a mathematical formula. Yes, you heard that right. You see, Tycho was a man who took his maths seriously, and when he got into a heated argument with another student, Mandrup Parsberg, they decided the only logical solution was to hack at each other with swords. Because logic, right? The duel turned out to be a classic case of this escalated quickly, and Tycho ended up losing a chunk of his nose. Ouch. Now Tycho, being Tycho, wasn't going to let a little thing like a missing nose hinder his astronomical ambitions. Instead, he did what any self-respecting nobleman would do. He got himself a prosthetic nose. But not just any prosthetic. This was a nose made of brass, though rumours also swirled about a gold version for special occasions. Imagine the bling factor. Contemporary accounts mention that he used a paste or glue to attach it, which must have made for some awkward dinner parties. Pass the potatoes, and oh, my nose just fell into the gravy. This duel, bizarre as it was, marked a turning point. Tycho's determination to challenge the status quo and his willingness to literally risk his face for his beliefs would become hallmarks of his career. As he moved on from Leipzig to other universities like Rostock, Wittenberg and Basel, he continued to hone his craft, driven by a singular vision, to map the heavens with unprecedented accuracy. What Tycho was doing was both revolutionary and rebellious. In a time when astrology and astronomy were tangled in a messy dance, and the geocentric model reigned supreme, Tycho's insistence on precise measurements was like a cannonball through complacency. His observations would eventually form the backbone for the work of later astronomers like Johannes Kepler. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The young nobleman-turned-astronomer was laying the groundwork for a celestial revolution in a world that was just starting to peek out from the shadow of the medieval ages. Castles and cathedrals dotted the landscape of Europe, but it was voices like Tycho's, questioning and challenging, that would herald the coming scientific enlightenment. In 16th century Europe, with its volatile mix of politics, religion and culture, Tycho Brahe was like a comet blazing through the night sky. Rare, brilliant, and impossible to ignore. And so, with the unmistakable flair of a man who'd already lost his nose but not his nerve, Tycho Brahe set his sights on the grandest of his plans, Uraniborg, an observatory fit for a king, quite literally, since it was funded by the Danish crown. You see, Tycho had caught the eye of King Frederick II, who, perhaps impressed by Tycho's celestial ambitions or simply his brass-tipped charm, gifted him the island of Hyven. This wasn't just a generous gift. It was a ticket to astronomical immortality. Uraniborg wasn't your run-of-the-mill observatory. Oh no, it was a palatial stargazing fortress, complete with gardens, alchemical laboratories, and enough instruments to make even the most gadget-obsessed astronomer of today green with envy. Construction began in 1576, and it was as much a symbol of Tycho's vision as it was a testament to the king's faith in him. The observatory cost a staggering 1% of Denmark's annual revenue, which today would be akin to a government funding a space station on the moon. Tycho wasn't exactly pinching pennies, and why should he? When you're charting the heavens, you might as well do it in style. Now, Tycho wasn't just building an observatory, he was building an entire scientific community. Uraniborg was staffed with artisans, instrument makers and observers creating a bustling hive of activity. This was the world's first research institute, a precursor to modern hubs of scientific inquiry. But let's not romanticize too much. Tycho ran his island like a feudal lord, complete with serfs working the fields. His management style was a curious mix of scientific collaboration and medieval overlordship. Labourers were tasked not only with maintaining the grounds, but also with participating in this grand celestial quest, whether they liked it or not. And then there was the moose. Yes, you heard right. Tycho kept a pet moose on Fisherman, which is as eccentric as it sounds. The creature was reputedly partial to beer, a fondness that led to its untimely demise when it got drunk at a party and took a fatal tumble down the stairs. It's one of those stories that's too bizarre to be fiction, yet it perfectly encapsulates the oddball charm of Tycho's Uraniborg. Picture this: a lavish dinner at the observatory, with noble guests discussing the cosmos, while a slightly tipsy moose wanders about. It's the kind of chaos only Tycho could orchestrate. But it wasn't all moose misadventures and celestial soirees. Running Uraniborg was no small feat, economically or politically. Tycho had to navigate the choppy waters of Danish politics to keep his funding intact. King Frederick II's support was invaluable, but with Frederick's death in 1588, Tycho's position became precarious. His successor, Christian IV, had different priorities, ones that didn't necessarily include funding Tycho's starry dreams. Plus, Tycho had a knack for annoying the local nobility, not least by enforcing labour duties on the peasants of Fisherman, which didn't exactly win him any popularity contests. Still, Uraniborg's impact on the scientific community was immense. Tycho's meticulous observations, carried out with instruments crafted to his exacting standards, provided data of unprecedented accuracy. He was a pioneer of the geo-heliocentric model, proposing that while the planets orbited the Sun, in turn, orbited the Earth. It was a halfway house between the Ptolemaic and Copernican systems, and while it wasn't entirely correct, it was an essential stepping stone. Tycho's contributions didn't end there. His star catalogue, which included over 1,000 stars, was the most comprehensive of its time. His commitment to precision set a new standard for astronomers and paved the way for his protégé, Johannes Kepler, to formulate the laws of planetary motion. Tycho's data was the bedrock upon which Kepler stood, proving that even if Tycho wasn't entirely on target with his theories, he was spot on with his measurements. Yet, for all its scientific triumphs, Uraniborg was a financial sinkhole. The ambitious project that had begun with royal backing slowly became a burden. Tycho's relationship with the Danish court soured, leading to a dramatic exit from Fisherman in 1597. He packed up his instruments and his entourage, leaving behind the island that had been his celestial playground. It was the end of an era, but not the end of Tycho's story. In the grand scheme of things, Uraniborg was both a testament to human ambition and a cautionary tale about the costs of such dreams. It was a place where science and spectacle collided, where the heavens were charted amidst the earthy chaos of moose and monarchs. And while the observatory itself would eventually fall into ruin, Tycho's legacy was indelible. He had dared to dream big and build even bigger, leaving behind a trail of stardust that would guide future generations. So as we leave Uraniborg, with its crumbling walls and ghostly echoes of scholarly debates, we look forward to the next chapter of Tycho's life. His journey wasn't over. He still had miles to go and stars to see, and the next part of his story would unfold in the heart of the Holy Roman Empire. But that's a tale for another day, as we pause to marvel at what one man, one island, and one very peculiar moose could achieve when reaching for the stars. As Tycho Brahe departed the crumbling walls of Uraniborg, one might imagine him doing so with a dramatic flourish, perhaps a brass-nosed salute to the island that had been his celestial stage. But the reality was less theatrical and more a tale of a man on the move, driven by necessity and ambition. In 1599, Tycho found himself in Prague, the heart of the Holy Roman Empire, at the invitation of Emperor Rudolf II, who was as enchanted by the stars as he was by Tycho's impressive track record. Now, Rudolf wasn't just any emperor. He was the kind of ruler who hoarded alchemists and astrologers like some people hoard cats. The emperor's court was a swirling vortex of intellectual curiosity and political intrigue, the perfect backdrop for Tycho's next chapter. Tycho's arrival in Prague marked the beginning of his most prolific period of scientific achievement. Without the burden of funding his own observatory, thanks to Rudolf's generous patronage, Tycho could focus purely on the stars. And focus he did, with the intensity of a man who had once duelled over math. It was here that Tycho would develop the Tychonic system, his magnum opus of astronomical models. Picture this, a cosmic choreography where the planets pirouetted around the Sun, which in turn dutifully orbited the Earth. It was a compromise between the geocentric and heliocentric models, a sort of celestial peace treaty, albeit one where Earth still held the VIP seat. But why the insistence on keeping Earth at the centre? Was it nostalgia, stubbornness, or simply a product of his time? The romantic in us might want to believe Tycho was clinging to a bygone era, but the truth is more pragmatic. Keeping Earth stationary was a way to appease the religious and scientific orthodoxy of the day, a kind of let's not rock the cosmic boat too much approach. Plus, Tycho's immense data-gathering operation had shown inconsistencies in the Copernican model that couldn't be ignored. His observations were more accurate than anything before. He recorded the positions of stars and planets with a precision that made other astronomers look like they were guessing after a couple of pints. Speaking of accuracy, let's not forget the sheer mind-boggling amount of data Tycho collected. Over 20 years he amassed observations that filled volumes. Imagine a pre-digital age where each data point was recorded by hand, often by candlelight, and you'll appreciate the monumental nature of his work. Tycho was the human equivalent of a modern-day supercomputer, tirelessly calculating and recalculating, driven by a relentless quest for precision. His star catalogue alone listed over 1,000 stars, a feat that left his contemporaries in awe and his detractors scrambling for excuses. But with great data comes great responsibility, or at least great debates. Enter Johannes Kepler, the man who would take Tycho's meticulous measurements and turn them into the laws of planetary motion we still use today. Tycho and Kepler's partnership was as prickly as a porcupine in a balloon shop. Kepler was a Copernican through and through, convinced that the Sun was the rightful centre of the universe. Tycho, meanwhile, was not about to let his Earth-centred model go quietly into the night. Their relationship was a whirlwind of intellectual sparring and mutual respect, punctuated by bouts of frustration and, at times, outright animosity. Tycho, ever the meticulous data hoarder, was reluctant to share his measurements with Kepler, fearing the younger astronomer might twist them to support his heliocentric views. It's a bit like handing your prized recipe to someone you suspect might just substitute all the key ingredients. Yet, despite their differences, or perhaps because of them, the duo managed to collaborate, with Tycho's data providing the foundation for Kepler's revolutionary laws of planetary motion. Kepler, with the kind of persistence usually reserved for toddlers in a candy store, eventually gained access to Tycho's data, and oh, what a treasure trove it was! Kepler's laws would transform our understanding of the cosmos, proving that orbits were elliptical, not circular, and that planets moved at varying speeds. But let's take a moment to appreciate the irony. Tycho's data, collected to support a geocentric universe, became the very evidence that toppled it. It's the kind of historical twist that makes you wonder if Tycho was secretly laughing from the afterlife. Now, let's not paint Tycho as some tragic figure clinging to outdated models while the world moved on. The Tychonic system, for all its stubbornness, was a crucial stepping stone. It bridged the gap between the Ptolemaic and Copernican systems, providing a framework that was both innovative and, for its time, politically palatable. If nothing else, Tycho taught us that science is as much about the journey as the destination. His meticulous methods raised the bar for observational astronomy, setting a standard for accuracy that would endure for centuries. And yet, for all his brilliance, Tycho was also a man of contradictions. He was a nobleman who preferred the company of stars to society, a scientist who valued precision over popularity, and a mentor who both inspired and infuriated those who worked with him. His legacy is a tapestry of triumphs and tribulations, woven with threads of ambition, rivalry, and the occasional dash of absurdity. As we look back on Tycho Brahe's contributions, we are reminded that the path of discovery is rarely a straight line. It's a winding road of detours and dead ends, illuminated by the flickering light of curiosity. Tycho's journey was no different, a testament to the power of perseverance and the courage to question the cosmos, even if it meant losing a nose or a bit of one's sanity along the way. And so, as Tycho's story unfolds against the backdrop of the Holy Roman Empire, we find a man who, despite his flaws and foibles, dared to dream big. His legacy is not just in the data he collected, but in the doors he opened for future astronomers to wander through, eyes fixed firmly on the stars. As we pause here, on the cusp of yet another chapter, we find ourselves eager to see how the saga of Tycho Brahe will continue to unfold, with all its celestial drama and human complexity. Stay tuned, because this cosmic tale is far from over. And so, as we pick up Tycho's trail in Prague, we're greeted not by the fanfare of astronomical triumph, but by the gritty undercurrents of political upheaval and personal drama. It's like the universe decided to swap out his starry-eyed ambitions for a soap opera, filled with enough intrigue and tension to make your head spin faster than a planet on its axis. Tycho's relocation from Denmark to Prague wasn't exactly a joyous farewell tour. He didn't leave Ven with a fond wave and a scrapbook of memories. He was more like a man evicted by circumstance. You see, Tycho's stardom had dimmed considerably back home. King Frederick II, his celestial benefactor, had shuffled off this mortal coil in 1588, leaving Tycho at the mercy of the new king, Christian IV. And let's just say, Christian wasn't exactly headlining the Tycho Brahe fan club. The young king had other priorities, like consolidating power and revamping the Danish navy, leaving Tycho's lavish, state-funded projects in the lurch. Add to that Tycho's knack for rubbing the nobility the wrong way. His feudal lord antics on Hafen didn't win him many friends, and it wasn't long before the political winds blew him right out of Denmark. By 1597, Tycho had packed his celestial circus and left, his once glorious Uraniborg reduced to a crumbling relic of better days. Enter Prague, where Emperor Rudolf II welcomed Tycho with open arms and a hefty purse. Rudolf was the quintessential Renaissance ruler, part collector, part mystic, and part mad scientist, with a court that resembled a who's who of European intellects. It's as if the emperor was running a 16th-century think tank, albeit one where the line between genius and lunacy was as thin as Tycho's patience for inaccuracy. Tycho's arrival in Prague marked a new beginning, but it was far from a smooth transition. Sure, he had the emperor's backing, but court politics were as unpredictable as the Prague weather. The Holy Roman Empire was a tangled web of factions, each vying for power and influence. Tycho had to navigate this quagmire while keeping his head above water, not unlike a star trying to shine through a dense nebula. This wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a seismic shift in Tycho's fortunes. With Rudolf's patronage, he didn't have to worry about funding his research, but with great patronage came great expectations. Rudolf wanted results, and Tycho was expected to deliver astronomical insights that could dazzle the court and justify his keep. It was a high-stakes game, and Tycho had to play his cards right. Meanwhile, the personal stakes were just as high. Tycho was no stranger to controversy, and his relationships were as volatile as his star charts. His collaboration with Johannes Kepler was a case in point. Their partnership was like a cosmic dance of intellects, with Tycho's precise observations tangoing with Kepler's heliocentric convictions. It was a match made in astronomical heaven, or at least it would have been, if they weren't constantly at each other's throats. Kepler, ever the Copernican crusader, was eager to get his hands on Tycho's data, convinced it held the key to unlocking the mysteries of planetary motion. Tycho, on the other hand, was wary of sharing his hard-won measurements, fearing his protégé might twist them to support the heliocentric heresy. It was a classic case of academic rivalry, with each man convinced of his own cosmic truth. Yet, despite their differences, Tycho and Kepler managed to collaborate, albeit grudgingly. Tycho's data became the bedrock for Kepler's laws of planetary motion, proving that even the most contentious partnerships can yield extraordinary results. But let's not sugarcoat it. The road to scientific enlightenment was paved with as much conflict as cooperation. And then there's the saga of Tycho's mysterious death in 1601, a tale shrouded in intrigue and speculation. Theories abound, with rumours of poison swirling like a comet's tail through the centuries. Was he the victim of a sinister plot, or did he simply succumb to natural causes? While the romantic allure of a murder mystery is hard to resist, modern science offers a more mundane explanation. Recent forensic analysis suggests Tycho's demise was likely due to uremia, a condition exacerbated by a bladder infection. Apparently, the poor man was too polite to excuse himself during a royal banquet, leading to a fatal urinary blockage. It's a decidedly unglamorous end for an astronomer of his stature, but sometimes reality is less a murder mystery and more a cautionary tale about the dangers of holding it in. As we sift through the myths and facts surrounding Tycho's life and death, we're reminded of the human side of this celestial legend. He was a man of contradictions, brilliant yet flawed, visionary yet stubborn. His story is a tapestry woven with threads of ambition, rivalry, and the inexorable march of progress. And while his earthly journey ended in Prague, his legacy continued to illuminate the night sky, guiding future astronomers on their own quests for cosmic truth. But let's not get too sentimental. There's still more to explore in the saga of Tycho Brahe, as his impact on the world of astronomy echoes through the ages. So, stick around for the next chapter, where we'll delve deeper into the ripples of his legacy and the astronomical revolution he helped ignite. Because, as with all great stories, the end is just the beginning of another tale. Stay tuned. And so, as we delve deeper into the impact of Tycho Brahe, let's lift the veil on the legacy of the man who dared to moonwalk onto the stage of astronomical history. Tycho's tale didn't end in Prague. Oh, no. His influence rippled outwards, like cosmic echoes resonating through the centuries. Despite the fact that he never nailed down the heliocentric model, Tycho's work was like the first domino in a chain reaction that would eventually lead to the astronomical enlightenment. First, let's talk about the elephant, or should we say, the moose, in the room, Tycho's reputation as a lone wolf genius. While it's tempting to picture him as a solitary hero, nose to the grindstone, or, brass nose to the telescope, the reality was less of a one-man show and more of an ensemble cast. Tycho's Uraniborg was a bustling scientific commune, staffed by a motley crew of artisans, mathematicians, and fellow star enthusiasts. It was the 16th century equivalent of a startup, with Tycho as the eccentric CEO and his staff as the tireless team making sure his vision didn't go up in stardust. Yes, Tycho was a visionary, but he was also a collaborator. His work was a symphony, not just a solo act. The precise data he collected wasn't just a testament to his own skill, but also reflected the collective effort of his team. And this data, exquisite, exacting, exhaustive, became the gold standard for astronomical observation. It was the bedrock that future minds would build upon, a treasure trove of celestial coordinates that, in many ways, was more valuable than the theories themselves. Take Johannes Kepler, for instance. Tycho's meticulous measurements were the foundation upon which Kepler stood to formulate his laws of planetary motion. Kepler's first two laws, published in 1609 and the third in 1609, revolutionized our understanding of the cosmos. By demonstrating that planets move in ellipses rather than perfect circles, and that their speed varies, Kepler shattered the crystalline spheres of the Ptolemaic system once and for all. Yet, it was Tycho's painstaking observations that provided the empirical backbone for these revelations. In essence, Tycho's data was the clay that Kepler sculpted into scientific masterpieces. But let's not forget the economic reality that underpinned Tycho's work. Uraniborg wasn't just a passion project, it was a financial behemoth, consuming resources at a rate that would make a modern-day tech startup blush. It cost Denmark a staggering 1% of its annual revenue, an astronomical sum for the time. The observatory, with its lush gardens and alchemical labs, was a marvel of engineering and a logistical nightmare. Tycho was a master of celestial navigation, but he also had to be an adept manager, juggling budgets and patronage like a circus performer with a penchant for astrolabes. This brings us to the political landscape that shaped Tycho's legacy. His departure from Denmark was more than a personal setback. It was a shift in the tides of scientific progress. In Prague, under Rudolf II's wing, Tycho found a fertile ground for his theories, but it was also a realm where the whims of politics could snuff out a career faster than a supernova. The Holy Roman Empire was a cauldron of intrigue, where intellectual pursuits were often overshadowed by courtly machinations. Tycho had to navigate these treacherous waters while advancing his scientific agenda. Yet, despite these challenges, Tycho's legacy endured. His insistence on precision laid the groundwork for the scientific method, emphasizing observation and data over speculation and doctrine. His geo-heliocentric model, though ultimately incorrect, was a crucial stepping stone, a necessary detour on the path to heliocentrism. Tycho's work was a bridge between the medieval and modern worlds, connecting the dots between ancient traditions and new paradigms. So, what can we learn from Tycho Brahe, the man who measured the heavens with a brass nose and a stubborn streak? His story is a testament to the power of persistence in the face of adversity. He was a man driven by a passion for the stars, undeterred by the loss of royal favour or the erratic politics of his day. His journey was one of triumphs and tribulations, a dance between genius and folly. Tycho's legacy is both an inspiring tale and a cautionary one. It reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge is a marathon, not a sprint, and that every discovery stands on the shoulders of those who came before. He showed us that the universe is vast and mysterious, but also knowable and quantifiable, and in doing so, he opened the door for future generations of stargazers and scientists to venture forth and explore. In the end, Tycho Brahe wasn't just an astronomer, he was a pioneer, a trailblazer whose work illuminated the path to the stars. His legacy is etched in the firmament, as enduring as the constellations he so meticulously charted. So, as we gaze up at the night sky, let us remember the man who dared to dream beyond the horizon, and who, despite the odds, reached for the stars and brought them a little closer to us all. The year is 1650, and you're about to trade your landlubber life for the salty embrace of the sea. Welcome to the Ottoman Empire's naval world, where the Mediterranean is your backyard and adventure is your middle name. Well, adventure, or maybe just survival, depending on how you look at it. The Ottoman Empire, with its sprawling territories and insatiable appetite for control, boasts one of the most formidable navies of the era. And guess what? You're about to become part of it. Why, you ask, would anyone in their right mind sign up for this life? Well, let's just say the recruitment methods weren't exactly subtle. Consider a scenario where a recruitment officer, or a Levant, stumbles into your Anatolian village, promising a life of glory and riches. The allure of exotic ports and the clink of coin might have you at hello, or it could be that refusing wasn't really an option. After all, the Empire's needs come first, and your personal plans? Well, they're more like suggestions. Once you're on board, literally, you realize that life at sea isn't quite the romanticized adventure you might have imagined. Sure, you'll see the glittering lights of Venice or the bustling markets of Alexandria, but you'll also contend with cramped quarters, questionable rations, and the constant threat of scurvy. If you're lucky, you might dodge a few cannonballs too. The Ottoman navy, while powerful, wasn't immune to the era's naval warfare realities. It was less Pirates of the Caribbean and more Survivor Mediterranean edition. The politics of the time play a hefty role in your new career. The empire, ruled by the mighty Sultan Mehmed IV, had its eyes set on expanding influence across the Mediterranean and beyond. This wasn't just about territory, it was about proving supremacy on the seas, competing with the likes of Spain and Venice. For you, this means your ship will be at the forefront of these ambitious plans, often finding itself in the line of fire. The Empire's naval ambitions mean your days are spent preparing for battles that are as much about prestige as they are about control. But let's talk more about those recruitment tactics. A popular method was the devshirme system, where Christian boys were taken from their families in the Balkans, converted to Islam, and trained as soldiers or sailors. Think of it as a very intense career day, where you don't really have a say in the career part. By the 17th century, the system had evolved, but the essence remained. If you were young, able-bodied, and lived in the right or wrong place, you might find yourself on a ship before you could say, "I'd rather not." Once on board, you quickly learn the harsh realities of naval life. Space is a luxury not afforded to sailors. And privacy? Forget about it. You're sleeping in hammocks, stacked like sardines, with the constant creak of the ship as your lullaby. Food consists of hardtack and salted meat, and fresh water is a rare treat. On a good day, you might get some dried beans. On a bad day, you're eyeing the rats as potential protein sources. And let's not even get started on hygiene. Let's just say the phrase, "smell like a sailor," wasn't coined without reason. Despite these challenges, there's a camaraderie among the crew that makes the hardship bearable. shared jokes, stories, and the occasional shanty help pass the time and keep spirits high. You develop a bond with your fellow sailors, knowing you're all in the same leaking boat, quite literally. There's a certain pride in being part of something larger than yourself, even if larger means being cannon fodder for the Empire's ambitions. The allure of the sea might have drawn you in, but it's the realities that keep you grounded. Metaphorically, of course, since you're anything but grounded. The Ottoman Empire's naval ambitions are vast, and its sailors are the linchpin of these plans. You're a cog in a massive machine, one that stretches from the Aegean to the Adriatic, with each ship a testament to the Empire's power. And while the romantic tales of sea life are enticing, it's the grit and grind of daily existence that define your new reality. So strap in, sailor, because this is just the beginning of your maritime adventure. So there you are, bobbing along the waves, feeling less like an epic adventurer and more like an extra in a never-ending sea saga. The day begins with the sun peeking over the horizon, and you, bleary-eyed, are already at it, scrubbing the deck, adjusting sails, or maybe keeping a lookout for enemy ships or a rogue wave that might be in a particularly foul mood. Life on an Ottoman ship in the 17th century isn't a cruise, it's a slog. Let's tackle the food situation first, because who doesn't love a good meal? Well, you, apparently. Sailor cuisine on the high seas is about as exciting as chewing cardboard. Your daily menu features hardtack, a kind of biscuit that could double as a weapon if need be. The stuff is so hard you'd think it was baked with the intention of surviving a siege. And if you're lucky, you might get some salted meat that tastes like a salt lick wrapped in sinew. Fresh produce is a rare luxury, and fresh water? Forget it. You're rationed like you're in the middle of a desert, which, technically, you kind of are when you're surrounded by endless, undrinkable salt water. But chin up, mate. There's always work to be done. The life of the sailor is defined by labour that Hercules himself might have side-eyed. From climbing the rigging to unfurl and furl those massive sails, to scrubbing the decks until they shine like a royal palace floor, the work is relentless. You'd think with all this cleaning the ship might smell better, but the persistent stench of sweat, salt, and whatever passes for food tends to linger. Now, let's talk about the tools that keep this floating fortress running. Navigation in the 17th century is more art than science, involving instruments like the astrolabe and cross-staff. These devices are your best friends when you're trying to figure out your ship's position by the stars. It sounds romantic, but picture this. You're on deck at midnight, freezing, trying to spot a constellation through a cloudy sky, all while balancing on a swaying ship. Not so poetic now, is it? Weaponry is another critical part of your life at sea. Ottoman ships are armed to the teeth, boasting cannons that could make a real mess of any enemy vessel foolish enough to pick a fight. As a sailor, you'd be trained in the use of muskets and swords too. The musket is a clumsy beast, requiring gunpowder, a lead ball, and a lot of patience to reload. Swords, on the other hand, are a more personal affair, intimate if you will. In the chaos of boarding an enemy ship, or repelling a boarding attempt, it's down to you, your blade, and your wits. Hierarchy on the ship is as rigid as a mast, with the captain ruling the roost. The captain, appointed by the Ottoman Navy, isn't just your boss, he's the law on this floating city. Officers are next in line, followed by experienced sailors who know the ropes, literally. And then there's you, the humble sailor, at the bottom of the rung, but essential nonetheless. The camaraderie here is your lifeline. These are your brothers in arms, and despite the grueling conditions, a shared joke or a song can lift spirits and create bonds stronger than iron. Now, let's get to the economic nitty-gritty. So, what's in it for you apart from the romanticized notion of sea life? Not as much as you'd hope. Sailors' wages aren't exactly princely. An average sailor might earn a few axes a month, which is enough to keep you fed and clothed, but not much else. The real lure? Prize money. Capture an enemy ship, and you get a cut of the spoils. It's a gamble, with riches on one side and an unmarked grave on the other. Some sailors strike it lucky, living out the rest of their days in comfort. Others, well, they join the ranks of those who went down with their ship. Incentives aside, the risks are very real. Disease is as much an enemy as any opposing navy. Scurvy, that infamous bane of sailors, can take out half a crew faster than cannon fire. The lack of vitamin C turns gums to jelly and leaves sailors too weak to lift a musket, let alone fight off an enemy boarding party. And then there are the storms, the real wild cards. Caught in one, you're at the mercy of the sea, praying that the ship holds together. So why do it? Why leave the safety of land for this watery hell? Perhaps it's the allure of adventure, the promise of riches, or simply the lack of better options. Whatever the reason, you're part of something grand, something vast and sweeping. The Ottoman Empire's ambitions stretch across the waters, and you're one of the lucky or unlucky souls tasked with making those dreams a reality. You're a sailor now, with salt in your veins and the horizon as your companion. Just remember to keep a weather eye on the horizon, because out here, anything can happen, and it usually does. Ah, the horizon. Your ever-present reminder of both opportunity and peril. Out here, the sun rises and sets on a world of naval legends and less glamorous truths. You've heard the tales, glorious naval battles, daring manoeuvres, and the kind of heroics that would put any blockbuster to shame. But let's not kid ourselves. The reality of 17th century naval warfare is more grit and grime than glory and grandeur. Take the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, for example, a clash that pitted the Holy League against the Ottomans in a bloody showdown. It was less about choreographed brilliance and more about chaotic carnage. Picture this. Over 400 ships crammed into the Gulf of Patras, the air thick with smoke and the cries of men. As a sailor, you'd be one of the thousands, tasked with keeping those cannons firing or, heaven help you, boarding an enemy vessel. The romanticized notion of naval battle as a gentlemanly chess game falls apart when you're knee-deep in sawdust, used to soak up blood, and struggling to breathe through the smoke of gunpowder. The Ottoman navy employed tactics that were as much about intimidation as they were about strategy. Ships were often arranged in a crescent formation, a nod to the empire's emblematic symbol, and a psychological tactic to unsettle the enemy. But let's be real. Once the fighting started, formations could quickly devolve into a free-for-all. The chaos of battle was a great equalizer, where rank mattered less than raw survival instincts. Now, if you're lucky, your role in a battle might just be loading and firing a cannon. If you're less fortunate, you'd find yourself part of a boarding crew, expected to leap onto an enemy ship armed with nothing more than a sword and a prayer. Boarding was no swashbuckling adventure. It was vicious, up-close combat where the only rule was to survive. The primary source, perhaps from an Ottoman sailor's letter, assuming he could write, which wasn't a given, might have described it as a dance of death, where the music was the clash of steel and the rhythm was set by the screams of the fallen. But why risk it all in these terrifying battles? Well, apart from the aforementioned promise of prize money, there was the lure of personal glory. Capture an enemy flag or save a comrade, and you'd earn bragging rights that could last a lifetime, however short that might be. However, the grim reality is that most sailors weren't out there chasing glory. They were trying to stay alive long enough to see another sunrise. Strategically, the Ottoman navy was a force to be reckoned with. The fleet was a linchpin in the empire's ambitions to dominate the Mediterranean. Ships like the galleys and galleons were the era's battleships, bristling with firepower and manned by crews who knew their way around both a sail and a sabre. The empire's reliance on these ships wasn't just about projecting power, it was about securing trade routes and ensuring the flow of goods, people, and influence. A fascinating economic tidbit: naval warfare was as much about economics as it was about tactics. A captured ship could be a financial windfall. Ships carried not only soldiers, but also valuable cargo spices, textiles, and sometimes even slaves. The Ottomans understood that controlling the sea lanes meant controlling wealth, a concept as relevant then as it is today. But don't let the numbers fool you. For every ship captured, many were lost. The sea, unpredictable and unforgiving, claimed its share of vessels. A storm could scatter a fleet as effectively as any enemy. One minute you're part of a formidable armada, the next you're clinging to debris, praying the sharks aren't hungry. The Mediterranean, for all its beauty, was a graveyard for many a sailor. What about the legends, you ask? Well, legends are comforting lies we tell ourselves. They don't mention the dysentery, the lice, or the fact that sometimes the biggest threat wasn't the enemy, but your own captain's incompetence. There's an Ottoman proverb that says, "A ship can be sunk by its captain's folly." Translation: a bad decision at the helm can send you to the bottom faster than any cannonball. As we delve deeper into the life of a 17th century Ottoman sailor, remember this: The sea is a theatre of dreams and nightmares, where the line between hero and hapless victim is as thin as a ship's hull. You're not just a player in the Empire's grand narrative. You're navigating a world where myth and reality collide in spectacular, often tragic fashion. The horizon remains your constant companion, a reminder of the vast unknowns that await. And who knows what tomorrow's tide might bring. As the horizon stretches and your ship inches closer to the coast, it's time to dock. But don't get too excited just yet. This isn't a leisure cruise coming to a fragrant tropical stop. You're about to hit some of the most dynamic ports of call the Mediterranean has to offer. From the bustling heart of Istanbul to the exotic shores of Algiers, each harbour is a microcosm of the world's cultural and economic exchanges. These docks are the Empire's lifelines, pulsing with the energy of trade, intrigue and, let's be honest, a bit of mischief. First stop, Istanbul, formerly Constantinople, and a city that feels like the centre of the universe. Here, the air is thick with the scent of spices, the sound of haggling, and the sight of ships from every corner of the earth jostling for space. Istanbul is the Ottoman Empire's crown jewel, a melting pot where East meets West and everyone's looking to make a buck or two. It's a city of minarets and markets where goods and ideas flow freely. You're likely to see Genoese merchants negotiating with Persian traders, while local vendors peddle everything from silk to saffron. The economic engine of the empire, Istanbul's ports, are an ever-changing tapestry of commerce and culture. Now, let's talk about the economics of this grand bazaar. The Ottomans weren't just interested in power, they were keen business people. Controlling trade routes was like holding the keys to a treasure chest. Silk, spices, coffee, and even exotic animals passed through Istanbul, with taxes and tariffs lining the Sultan's coffers. The city was a nexus point in a trade network that stretched from the heart of Africa to the remote corners of Asia. And you, the humble sailor, are part of this grand economic dance, ensuring that the goods get where they need to go, while hoping to pocket a little extra along the way. But Istanbul's not the only star of the show. Sail west and you'll find yourself in Algiers, a city that has its own reputation, one that's as thrilling as it is notorious. Algiers, the Barbary Coast's jewel, is a place where legality is more like a suggestion than a rule. Here, piracy isn't just a career option, it's practically a cultural institution. The infamous Barbary pirates or corsairs operate with a wink and a nod from local authorities. They're a thorn in the side of European powers and a potential ally for the Ottomans when the political winds blow just right. Algiers is where the lines between legitimate trade and outright piracy blur. You might find yourself unloading a cargo of textiles one minute and smuggling a stash of contraband the next. And let's not pretend this isn't tempting. The rewards of smuggling and piracy can be life-changing, assuming you don't end up at the bottom of the sea or in chains. A successful pirate raid could net you enough to retire or, at the very least, afford a few months of indulgence. But with great risk comes, well, even greater risk. The Mediterranean is rife with dangers, from the treacherous waters themselves to the ever-watchful eyes of naval patrols. The Ottomans, while occasionally turning a blind eye to piracy when it suits them, are also keen on maintaining order when it benefits their interests. Capture by the wrong authorities could mean a swift introduction to the gallows or a lifetime rowing in the galley of a ship, which, believe me, is a fate worse than drowning. Shore leave, as you might guess, isn't just about stretching your legs and feeling solid ground underfoot. It's an opportunity, a brief respite from the confines of the ship, where you can indulge in the pleasures and vices of each port. In Algiers, that might mean sampling local delicacies or partaking in the vibrant nightlife. In Istanbul, it could be wandering the Grand Bazaar or losing yourself in the labyrinthine streets. But remember, sailor, keep your wits about you. Ports are bustling centres of commerce and culture, but they're also teeming with pickpockets and con artists waiting to relieve you of your hard-earned axes. The allure of the ports isn't just about trade or even personal gain. It's about the cultural exchanges that happen in these crossroads. Ideas, languages, and even diseases spread as fast as the traded goods. You might overhear a Venetian sailor discussing the latest scientific discoveries, or a Moorish merchant sharing tales of distant lands. These ports are vibrant hubs of knowledge and innovation, where the world feels just a little bit smaller and the possibilities a tad bit larger. Of course, the romantic notion of these ports as idyllic centres of trade and culture glosses over the harsher realities. Disease is a constant companion, with plague outbreaks as common as market days. Hygiene, or the lack thereof, means that each docked ship is a potential floating petri dish. And let's not forget the ever-present threat of conflict. These ports are strategic assets, coveted by empires and pirates alike, meaning that territorial disputes can erupt into skirmishes faster than you can say, sail ho. So why risk it all, you ask? Why sail into these bustling, chaotic, and occasionally dangerous ports? Simple. The promise of the unknown, the allure of wealth, and the chance to be part of something bigger than yourself. As you stand on the deck, watching the coastline draw nearer, you're not just a sailor, you're an adventurer, a cog in the grand machine of history. And as long as the sea keeps calling, you'll keep answering, setting sail for the next port of call, the next opportunity, and the next chapter in this unending maritime epic. While the legends of the seas paint a picture of romance and glory, the reality is a mosaic of grit, grime, and the occasional glint of gold. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the water, you can't help but feel a thrill of anticipation. What will tomorrow bring? Another port, another adventure, and perhaps a chance to rewrite your story on the ever-changing tides of the Mediterranean. As the sea dots the horizon with its endless possibilities, let's shift gears from the salt-sprayed deck to life after the waves have had their fill of you. What happens when the maritime ride ends, and you step back onto solid ground, no longer swaying to the rhythm of the ocean? For the sailors of the Ottoman Empire, the end of a voyage is less a final curtain call and more the opening of a new, unpredictable act. Imagine this. You've survived the rigours of naval life, dodged cannonballs, and maybe even pocketed a few axes from prize money. But now you're back on land, and the world seems both familiar and foreign. The first thing you notice? The ground refuses to sway, which is both a relief and a disconcerting absence, like missing a tooth you're used to fiddling with. But nostalgia aside, what's next for a seasoned sailor? Well, if Lady Luck has been your constant companion, you might find yourself among the fortunate few who strike it rich. Perhaps you've amassed enough wealth to purchase a small plot of land, maybe even a business. Imagine the pride swelling in your chest as you walk the streets of Istanbul or Algiers, no longer just a cog in the Ottoman machine, but a man of means. These success stories become local legends, whispered in taverns and around dinner tables. But let's not kid ourselves. This is the exception, not the rule. For most sailors, poverty is the far more likely post-sea reality. The axes you earned barely stretch beyond the next meal, and without the structure of ship life, the world can feel unmoored. Injuries sustained at sea, bad knees from climbing rigging, lungs scarred from smoke, don't exactly make you a prime candidate for other employment. The Ottoman Empire doesn't offer a sailor's pension, and charitable acts are as rare as fresh fruit on a long voyage. Many find themselves scraping by, taking odd jobs or relying on the charity of family if they have any left willing to help. Let's not forget those who can't escape the physical toll of naval life. Injuries and disease can leave a sailor incapacitated, and without modern medicine, conditions like scurvy leave lasting damage, if not death. These men become silent casualties, their stories overshadowed by the louder tales of glory and adventure. Now, you might wonder how these individual stories fit into the grand tapestry of the Ottoman Empire, especially as it begins its slow decline. By the late 17th century, the empire, once a formidable force commanding respect and fear across the Mediterranean, starts showing cracks. Economic strains, military overreach, and internal corruption nibble away at its might. The navy, once a jewel in the Ottoman crown, reflects this decline. Ships age, funds dwindle, and the maritime prowess that once symbolized power begins to wane. Sailors, the backbone of this naval might, are caught in the crossfire of history. Their lives, brimming with potential yet often marked by hardship, mirror the broader decline of the empire. They become emblematic of a system that once promised the world but often delivered hardship, much like the empire itself. The allure of the sea, the promise of adventure and riches, begins to lose its luster as reality sets in. But this isn't just a tale of decline, it's also a story of enduring legacy. The sailors of the Ottoman Navy may not have changed the world in grand, sweeping gestures, but their contributions ripple through history. they helped forge the connections that shaped the Mediterranean world, navigating not only waters but also the complex web of trade and diplomacy. They carried goods and ideas, and even as they faced the harsh realities of their time, they contributed to a cultural and economic exchange that would resonate for centuries. Today, the romanticized notion of the intrepid sailor lives on, capturing imaginations and inspiring countless tales. These sailors, with their grit and resolve, are part of the rich tapestry of history, their stories woven into the larger narrative of the Ottoman Empire. Even as the empire itself receded into the annals of history, its sailors left behind a legacy of exploration, adventure, and resilience. So, as we wrap up this maritime journey, let's remember the sailors not just as players in a historical drama, but as real people with dreams, struggles, and triumphs. Their lives, like the waves they once sailed, were a blend of beauty and brutality, romance and reality. And as the echoes of their adventures continue to ripple through time, we're reminded that history is not just a record of what happened, but a living story, shaped by those who dared to chart its course.